Good evening. This is a meeting of the Norwood Planning Board. This is March 26, 2019. We're meeting at the Civic Center, 165 Manhattan Street, second floor at the Willett Room, and we're being recorded by Norwood Community Media. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from 3/11/19. Did everyone get a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Yes.
Any comments or questions?
Just thank you for using the front and back of the paper. I like to be consistent.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes as presented, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor say, any
Aye.
further comment? No? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's a 5-0. The next order of business is an A&R plan, approval not required plan for 95 Moore Street. Assessors map 15, block 12A, lot 4, lot 5, lot 6, lot 8. Michael Clemmy, Subaru of New England. Hi.
Hi, my name is Tim Toomey. I here represent Michael Clemmy. I work with Michael. I've been to a few of the meetings, Cleveland, June, members of the board. What we're looking to do is have the A&R plan signed. We're also looking for a modification of the special permit that we received. Part of the special permit process was that we could bring car carriers up to there. I know there was some debate about it. The DCD, the people who have leased a lot from us, have been successful in 84 Moore Street, so they're gonna go back to keeping the car carriers at 1201 Boston Providence Highway and not bring them up to this lot. And so that's why we want to divide the lot up. We're gonna use the back building for a park, and DCD is gonna use the front.
Basically, what we're doing is running a line through here on the lot, so that this lot has in excess of the 50-foot required frontage, excess of the area required, and I believe the building meets the setback to that line, and then this would remain just vehicle storage.
Okay, as far as the A&R plan, I don't see a problem with that as much. As far as amending the conditions, I guess we gotta see what we may have to do on that, and I don't think that was on the agenda tonight. And I'd rather see if we can postpone that.
Sure.
I think it may have to be, we may have to go through a hearing.
Yeah,
Oh,
Unfortunately.
they have to advertise.
Yeah,
And I
it's a
understand what you
special permit
want to do
modification.
there, and I think it's probably a more positive outcome.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it takes away, we talked about the car carriers and how they were gonna be brought into the property and leave the property, and how the turning radiuses work, and I think this works out better for everybody. But however
Okay.
you wanna proceed
I
with it,
think
it's
we're
fine.
bound by that, and
Okay.
we understand where you're coming from on that, so we won't discuss that any further right now tonight. And I believe it may have to be advertised, but we will check on that.
Yeah, it's a
I'll
modification
give
to
you a call tomorrow as far as
setting up a date.
when the days in
Yeah, in the process.
what we have to notify exactly.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, on the A&R plan, I don't know if everyone's gotten a chance to see it.
I just have a
Sure.
quick question. 95 Morris is at the corner,
Correct.
and what are we approving not required?
They're gonna split the lot right along this line here.
Okay. And we're not gonna bring the car carriers up now, but that's for later.
That's for later,
Later
because
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, so we're splitting the lot just at that, so are we gonna have two separate lots? Yes?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Does that change anything on our previous approval? It doesn't matter if they,
Well, are you still gonna do the construction at the exits onto Morse?
Well, we are now because there's gonna be no car carriers.
Okay, so
So
that
we're gonna do-
changes the
yeah,
whole
we're gonna
thing that we
modify it so the
approved.
trucks can
Yeah,
get
but
in
that's
and
at
out.
the next, that'll be at the
Yeah.
next hearing.
Yeah.
That'll
Yeah.
have to be,
Okay.
that'll be an amendment to the decision.
Yep, exactly.
that will have to be
That's-
advertised, and we'll have to
Yeah.
go through the process.
This really just divides the lot, the back building to the front lot.
Yeah, why don't we hold
And
off
then
on it?
basically,
Hold off on
I
it.
Yeah.
believe this parcel
Oh,
will
well, not
remain
the
as
A&R.
95 Morse,
okay?
I think we have to do the
and
A&R.
this parcel here will
You sure?
end up with a Pleasant Street address because its frontage is on Pleasant.
The A&R is a simple, we're just dividing
Yeah.
the lot into two lots.
I understand that, but do we get we're gonna put all the cars that were on originally one lot, we're gonna put them on the back over here?
No, the back lot has 38 spaces, and the balance of the lot has the remainder.
So we're not adding spots or
No.
Not adding
changing
spots.
anything?
No, it's really,
None.
you're taking the exact same lot and you're just putting a line across it, making it two lots. So it's not,
Okay. Any further questions on this, Al?
Answer my question.
Okay.
Nope, both comply with land square footage, so there's no problem.
Okay.
Frontage is fine, so.
Who's getting stuck
I'll
with the
entertain a
water
motion.
garden? Who's
Pardon?
getting stuck with the water garden? DCD or?
Yeah, that's on their piece.
But they lease it from,
Oh, you're keeping them?
we're keeping them, yeah, they lease that, they have a long-term lease for that lot, and we're retaining that back building, so that's why we're separating. But we're not selling the lot to them, we're still leasing the lot. So we'll be in control of the piece of land.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the A&R plan.
Do I hear a second? I do hear a second.
Second.
Anything further on that?
No.
No, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's a
Aye.
f- Opposed? That's a 4-1. Is this something we can sign for you and get back to you tomorrow?
Sure.
Fine, I don't know if
Sign
I'm
at
gonna
the end
talk
of the
about
meeting.
it
Yeah.
anyway.
We can do this at the end?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's just that we have a very,
Yep.
Deep
Tight
agenda.
agenda, right, I know.
okay.
Alrighty.
We'll take care of that.
We'll come back, see you tomorrow.
Yep,
Is that
absolutely.
right?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hate to be that guy, but there's a hole in one of those plastic fences coming down. There's a hole in one of those pieces of fence down there.
I'll walk it tomorrow and get it set.
Thank you.
Next item is a minor site approval,
Get 'em
sign
while you
sign for Sunrise Breakfast, 528 Washington Street. Edmund Edmund Pagacci, business owner and applicant. What up?
The reason is because the old sign, 3 weeks ago when it was a strong wind, the sign was broken, some parts fell down. I don't like something happens, so I have to put new sign.
Okay. Let's,
Yep. So the sign itself was originally opposed to be 3 feet 10 inches by 8 feet 10 inches, and that's what you'll find in the memo I wrote to you. I contacted the sign company. The sign was slightly over the zoning requirement, so the new, I guess, version I handed out today, it is in compliance. It's under, I think it's 29.1, I think, total square feet. So it is compliance with zoning bylaw 6.2.16.2. As you see from the sign itself, it's the restaurant's name, Sunrise Breakfast. It has a breakfast imagery. Background is a white with black lettering for sunrise, yellow lettering for breakfast. The outside strip, I believe, is black. There's a black plastic cap. And other than that, the sign is compliance with our zoning bylaws, and it's. I recommend approval based upon the new
And I
rendering.
recommend the breakfast there.
Yeah, me too.
Right. If you haven't tried it, try it. You'll enjoy it.
any further comments? Not on the breakfast, on the sign.
I love the eggs making the bee. No further comments.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to,
I make a motion, we accept it as presented on its revised.
do I hear a second?
I'll second that, and I'll second Mr. Poro's comment about the breakfast.
All right, any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a 5-0.
So what would happen now is I'll write you an approval letter as well as giving a copy to the building department. All you'll have to do, either you or your sign company, take that approval letter to the building department to get the permitting. You'll be good to go from there to to fix it. If you want to, if not, I can just, I can walk, are you at your restaurant during the day? I can walk it over and give it to you. All right.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, folks.
Sunrise? Sunrise. Yeah, it might be a little, I like the egg. I think it's good. I'd like it to be a better sign, but we're working on that, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Do we have a, is this a continued public hearing, or is there a notice? you have the notice?
I do not have the notice, and it's not continuing.
Is this continued? I
This is
didn't
not
hear your answer.
continued.
No, we're just opening this for the,
We're opening this.
Okay.
We could just read it off of that.
Yeah.
If you have it there, we can just read it off of that. It's good, the notice, it's gonna
Right.
bring the notice up.
Okay. It's 7:05. We have a public hearing, zoning bylaw amendment for April 25th, 2019, special town meeting. Amendment to, excuse me, it's April, oh yes. For the April 25th, 2019 special town meeting, amendment to section 3.0, use regulations, subsection G, wholesale business and storage, number 3, open lot storage. The clerk will read the public hearing notice in just a second.
Can we read it? Oh, yeah, okay, sure. In accordance with the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Norwood Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 26, 2019, at 7:05 p.m. in the Norwood Civic Center, 165 Manhattan Street, on the second floor in the Willett Room. The purpose of the public hearing is to accept public comments on a zoning bylaw amendment to Section 3.0, use regulations, subsection G, wholesale business and storage. Number 3, open lot storage. The purpose of the amendment is to establish a temporary moratorium on open lot storage of vehicles. The draft zoning bylaw amendment is on file in the planning department at Town Hall and may be reviewed during normal business hours.
Okay. This was yours. You want to comment on it?
Yeah, the purpose of this amendment zoning is to put a one-year moratorium on open lot storage in the town. Over the last couple of years, the town has been really, deluged or whatever, not overrun, but with open lot storage. Now, when I say open lot storage, I am specifically talking about parked cars by dealers that are not on their lots. These are the sublots that you see around town. And Patrick did a study, and we've got about, in these, not counting what's on Route 1, we've got about almost 4,000 cars parked out there on these sublots, I'll call them, and about 45 acres of land. Now, believe me, we understand the car dealerships are a major, major part of the business in Norwood. Everyone knows, the whole state knows the auto mile in Norwood. We understand that. We understand that open lot storage is a major part of their business. They need to have these cars stored. But we've come to the point, and some of the board members agree with me, and that we're busting. These open lot storages have grown into starting to come off Route 1 into the neighborhoods. And if you think about it, 45 acres of land for this is a lot of land. And we're continuing to get requests for this type of open lot storage. Now, my purpose of bringing this forward to have a moratorium of 1 year is so that the planning board, zoning board of appeals, dealers can work out some kind of arrangement. I mean, we've had, in the past year, we've had cars illegally parked in parking lots. We've had cars shifted from one illegal spot to another. The building inspectors have to gone up and waste his time to get him to move the cars, so they get moved for a while, they slowly get back. We've been asked, and I don't want to say, I think we're business friendly in Norwood, and I really, truly, believe that. But, we've been asked to approve pieces of land, clear-cut pieces of green, to park cars for out-of-town dealerships. Right now, we have cars parked, Tesla cars parked in one of our parking lots. Please raise your hand if you know if there's a Tesla dealer in Norwood. There is not. And I don't want to say we've become an easy target, but kind of I think we have a little bit. And I think that we need to come up with a strategy that helps the dealers, but also protects the town. It's one of the things we hear, and we don't hear a lot of things on the board, but we do hear, God damn, we'll park more cars. And you drive, people know you drive around town and they're everywhere. One of the problems we have is Route 1. Route 1, there are 3 or 4 different, I think 3 different zones. Four different zones, zoning districts on Route 1. And one of the things that we'd like to discuss in the next year is looking at Route 1 and maybe rezoning it, looking at, zoning has changed a lot in the last 50 years. A lot of those zones, I think 3 out of those 4 zones that are currently on Route 1 don't allow open lot storage. And that's kind of where we want it. So that's one of the things. So you don't get a lot of tax dollars out of open lot storage. It's a lot of space. I think right now it's limited to limited manufacturing?
Just manufacturing.
Manufacturing districts, which, when zoning was set up, were in the zone of manufacturing areas. Well, those areas are not manufacturing anymore. There's not a lot of this going on. And so the purpose of bringing this forward is to give us a year to sit down to the zoning board of appeals, which has a lot to do with this as well, because they're an authority granting board, and get with some of the dealers and come up with a way. And maybe we look at Route 1, maybe we look at the rezoning of Route 1, we bring that forward to allow it to be a little bit smarter. Like I said, I asked a dealer in Westwood, well, why can't you park your cars in Westwood? Well, Westwood, they don't allow it. And as much as I love Westwood, I don't want to. I think that our dealers, if we're going to give valuable land to the car dealers, I want the car dealer to be a Norwood car dealer. Just personal opinion. I don't know if that's legal. I don't know that. We have attorneys here. We have town council that could tell us if that's legal or not. But I don't think that we should be storing cars for out-of-town dealers because their towns won't allow them. And I don't want Norwood to be an easy mark. I think that we need to tighten this up, look at it smartly, and I know I'm probably going on, repeating myself. So that's the purpose of this, bringing this forward anyway.
Thank you. I'm going to open this up to the board if they have any comments or questions, and then I'll open up to the public, and members of the public, just tell us your name and where your address, and you can certainly will entertain your questions and comments. Anyone here on the board have any questions or comments on this?
I think Ernie hit it on the head. It's the auto mile's no longer a mile long. They're worried that it's going to be a mile wide, right?
Right. Anyone else?
I think the lack of being redundant, I think Ernie covered it pretty well.
You can say that? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd just like to say one thing about it too. Ernie hit on this, and one of the big things we want to take away from this is doing a corridor study. Both Rentham and Foxborough have recently completed corridor studies of Route 1, and obviously open lot storage is not just contained within Route 1, it's within all manufacturing districts that's allowed. But I think it's a good practice to take a step back and reevaluate how we want that area to look, how we want, how do we want to be doing things in the future. And I think it's not meant to be a hindrance to the auto industry. It's meant to be both a positive for the town and the auto industry to have a little bit more focus of where we want that sort of activity to occur. And this gives us time to take a better look at it.
As far as doing a review, is there a possibility of grant money for something like that, or is it something we would?
Yeah, I think me and Paul Alkiotis, the director, have discussed it and probably looking at maybe reaching for grants for technical assistance to see about doing a corridor study and getting an actual physical document in place and something that we can take forward and apply to a zoning amendment.
Okay. Yes.
I want to thank Patrick for putting that together, because seeing it in black and white was, even though poor Mark Schubert is sick of being called and saying they're here, they're there, the other place, Patrick put together a black and white, here's what we got, here's how many acres, here's how many cars, and I think it's no secret. We like the commercial business, we just need to get organized with it. So well put, Ernie, thank you.
I'll open it up for the public if anyone has any comments or questions. Yes.
Thank you. Tony Esco, District 5, Endicott Street. I have a couple of comments and a question. First, I want to say
Oh.
that...
Can we have him go up there so that?
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure.
Up here.
Come on up. They want you on TV.
Tony Esco, District 5. First, I want to say that I highly respect that the Auto Mile is a big business in Norwood, and I think Norwood has been a very good business partner with them, and I would like to see a better respect being reciprocated to us, and I think 45 acres of coverage of auto storage is very generous. I watch the planning board meetings on TV. It's a lot easier. And I know you're very busy. I have a grave concern in thinking that a one-year moratorium is long enough, especially in light of the comments you say about a corridor study and things such as that. So that's one thing I wanted to put out. Why do you think 1 year is enough? It just doesn't seem like long enough to me to really do it right. And when you talk about grant money, one of the things that bugs me is that Norwood lets their open space and master recreation plan expire. I recently sent an email because I see the Department of Conservation Recreation has, grants, and I asked why aren't we applying for them for the trails and this and that. Because we can't, because our plan expired, and I know it's in the process of being recertified, and I know it's only good, I believe, for 5 years. But why do we wait for it to expire? Why don't we, in the beginning of the 5th year, start working on the next one so they're always in continuity, so that we're always eligible for grant money when it comes out? So that's something I want to put forth to you, because I remember I asked for $30,000. I asked for an amendment at town meeting so that we could get this done sooner. Oh, don't worry, we'll get it done. But it expired. And we're not eligible right now, because I recently asked about that, and it was on the CPA committee meeting too. Because they can't apply for stuff that's out there because the plan has expired. So that's just another comment. But my biggest concern is that I don't think 12 months is enough for a moratorium. And other towns have, according to this, some communities don't even allow it at all. So what would be the huge negative of going on the safe side and putting a moratorium for 2 years? And then my other question is, would this moratorium work like other bylaw changes in that it would have to go to the state and it takes like 6 months but to come back and get approved? Does that have to happen too?
Yeah, so if it goes, if this goes to town meeting and it's voted on and approved, then it goes to the Attorney General, just like all zoning
Right.
and all amendments, and has to be, it's usually every 90 days
Right.
by the time they get it. So that's just the process it goes.
Right, so what's the actual moratorium deadline on this? June 30th, 2020, or is it December 31st, what's the actual date?
I think it would be the time from when the Attorney General approves it.
We put that in, and we put in.
So that
from
was
the
a
start
confusion
of-
to me.
So if it goes on the on the 25th of April, if it is voted in,
Mhm.
then there's 90 days on top of that.
Usually, it's usually from the
Or
time
shorter.
that, the completion of the special town meeting.
Tony, on just
So that's a
on the
legal
1
question.
year, the reason I suggested 1 year is these still are businesses in our town. And, you know, if you extend it out, I mean, yeah, it may be aggressive. You know, maybe we don't have everything done in a year that we'd like. But I think these are still businesses that are actively doing business in the town. And I think that if you, or my thought anyway, was that if you extend it out past a year, you're almost, I don't want to say you're ramming them in. I mean, these people still have they still have the right to do business, and we understand that this is part of their right to do business.
Absolutely.
So the 1 year, do we get everything pushed into a year? No, but I think that gives us a time to really look at it and study it and try to come up with some kind of a plan or something that, and I think anything pushing it out past that almost, you know, even for a year, I mean, it's gonna hurt the businesses. I mean, these businesses are growing, they're buying more dealerships, they need more cars. You know, obviously they sell more cars, they have to store more cars, and so I think that was the purpose for a year. And as far as the open space, we did put and I think, remember, we put the planning board brought the town meeting for, I think it was 30 or 35,000 to do it. It was, initially was voted down. And then
I
we
tried to get it
had
back.
to bring it back in the fall, and then we got it passed, but
Yeah.
that was, yeah.
You know,
But that was the reason for the year.
I'd just like to see that have continuity and not expire.
Like I said, maybe we
have
have-
it overlaps,
Well, I
and you're always
agree
in
with you. I agree with
compliance
that.
and not come out of compliance, because then you can't apply for the grant. So anyway, thank you for your time and your work.
Thanks.
I'll take the hit on that one.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Marvin Solomon from
Come on up.
65 Granmore Road. Since you are planning to move some business to Route 1, and there is timeline like about 1 year, during this 1 year, you think there will be opportunity for no more licenses on Route 1 for storage until you finish the review, or Route 1 is still available?
Well, they can store cars on their lots. This has nothing to do with their lots. So if Jack Madden or Bach or Mr. Spiegel, whatever, has a car dealership now, they're allowed to store cars on those lots. This has nothing to do with Route 1, what is on their businesses today.
What
They
about
will
new dealers? Like, I'm interested in buying or renting property.
Oh, a new dealer, yes. I mean, of course we're looking for businesses to come. We're talking about ancillary lots that would be satellite lots, if you would,
Okay.
in the town. But any dealer that's on Route 1, if they follow the bylaws, can store cars on their lot. We're not saying they can't store a car. So if you bought a dealership down there and you want to store, whatever car you sell on your lot, then as long as
I'm
you
working
follow
on a
it.
piece of land, but it's wet land. I'm waiting for Al to see the drawing, if it is worth something.
Yeah, I mean, if it's zoned for that, I mean, sure, we welcome
Okay.
it. This isn't to deter business, new business coming in. This is satellite lots that are popping up right now on other unused pieces of property around town.
And as your plans progress, you can go to see the planning office. You're right next door here. And they're happy to review a plan with you before you get too far into the process. And they'll guide you in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Judith Howard, Nickel Street. I just think that having a temporary one, as you say, is okay for the year. And I think after the year passes, if you think it needs to be extended, perhaps it can be extended, if that happens. The second thing is, I just want to know who owns the property of all those cars that are parked near the airport? Like you're coming onto Route 1? Because there's no name or anything like that. And so it must be somebody who's storing those cars down there.
They're there legally.
Those are approved lots.
Oh,
That's an
okay.
approved
That's
lot,
not
access road.
airport? That's not airport property?
No, that's a private, I know the owner, it's a privately owned lot who they rent the space to. Those cars down on Access Road, they're there
Yes.
legally. That's not on airport land.
Not on the
Not on airport land.
Because that's not what airport.
Right.
The other thing is that I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the town to get revenue. So I would be in favor of even perhaps including this in your study or your report to charge the auto dealers, I'd say $100 for the storage of each unregistered car. But maybe that's too much to start off, but anyway, to start off, getting some revenue, because the town needs revenue, and it's a perfect avenue for it. Now, I understand that there are some automobile dealers that are down in Rentham and Foxborough, who are storing their cars here in Norwood. So I really am in favor of this. I actually would like to have a permanent moratorium.
I think on that, Judith, this board, I don't believe we have the authority to set fees. I think you could probably go up to the third floor of the town hall tonight and state the case. They would probably be the ones. I believe there was something in discussion, there's some tax that the state allows, but that's Board of Selectmen. We're not looking here to.
So it could not be part of your.
I don't believe it can be, nor would I make it part of my motion. I don't think that's this board's purview. Thank you, to start charging. It might be a great idea, it may be something that the Board of Selectmen, looks into, but I don't think that the planning board is, we're not here for that tonight. At least I'm not.
Okay, well, I just thought I'd bring it up.
Thank you.
And I've brought it up before, so.
Can I
Thank
ask
you.
Judith a question? Didn't that go up in front of the selectmen about?
I believe it did, or something was
Judith said
talked
no?
about.
I thought wasn't it on there?
I think it was at the annual last year.
Yeah, the annual last year, they talked about it.
It was put in place looking at it, but I think they did not go forward.
It's
with
got to
that.
go through the legislature or something, right?
I think it's a lot more complicated than just
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, let us begin then.
No.
Thank you. Anyone
Thank
else? Mr. Hearn?
Chairman, good evening. David Hearn. I'm not appearing on behalf of anybody this evening. I live at 98 Berwick Place. I'm speaking as a resident, as a taxpayer, and as somebody who's interested in, when we make changes to our bylaws, doing it in a way that makes sense. Not to suggest that it doesn't make sense now, but I do have some questions. The proposal that I'm reading out on the table refers to open lot storage of vehicles. I assume you mean motor vehicles.
Yes.
Shouldn't the bylaws say that? Bicycles are vehicles? Boats are a kind of vehicle? So motor vehicles, wherever it says vehicles, should say motor vehicles. The definition, open lot vehicular storage, probably should refer to open lot motor vehicle storage. Again, for that same reason. I wonder, we're in this position, and that publicly I've represented auto dealers on this issue. But we're in this position, and I've advocated to this board for years that you need to rezone Route 1. And I'm glad to see that the board is interested in doing that. I've been making that argument for years, because the zoning along Route 1 is what has created the situation that many people complain about. You can only do open lot storage in manufacturing zones. And by the way, an auto dealer does need an open lot storage permit, even to store on their own property, because it's open lot storage. And typically, an automobile dealer setting up on Route 1, or wherever they set up, asks for that relief as part of the relief that they need in order to conduct business. But part of the reason why auto dealers are, and I'm not advocating them tonight, but I'm concerned, I'd like to see this done well, if it's going to benefit the town. Auto dealers are limited on large chunks of Route 1 from doing business. They simply can't do it. and they can't store their cars there. So they can only do it in the manufacturing zone, so they go where the manufacturing zone is. If you fix the zoning on Route 1, you take the pressure off of people going to these other sites. And hopefully the board can do that. Not as part of this, certainly. The other question I had is, where does it say 1 year, the moratorium?
It doesn't.
It ought
It
to
says-
say,
Yeah,
It says ends on June 2020, the next page.
oh, the back page.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, you know, the
Yeah.
question is, how long does it take? Maybe you make it, typically though, and going back to the question was asked a moment ago, zoning changes take effect when town meeting votes them, subject to the approval of the Attorney General, and then they're sort of retroactive. So pick a time frame that makes sense, whether it's June 30th of 2020, and the suggestion was if it passes and then a year later you're working on it, but you haven't quite finished it, you might ask town meeting again to do something. I'm not arguing for or against the interests of some of my clients, and I'm speaking as a resident and a taxpayer. But also, you know, I wonder if Route 1 ought to be excluded from this bylaw, from this change. Exclude property along Route 1 from the moratorium. There's no argument that's the auto mile. There's no argument that the auto dealers generate an awful lot of tax revenue for this town. They attract people to this town who spend money in the town. If you're concerned about satellite lots popping up, I don't know that you need to be quite so concerned about lots on Route 1, if there's any manufacturing land left.
well, that's, you know that, our purpose is to look at Route 1 and
But
do
I would
exactly what you.
suggest that you exclude Route 1 from the moratorium. And you know, as I say, I think tighten it up in terms of, you know, referring specifically to motor vehicles. The other thing is that the last sentence on page 1, no special permits or site plan approvals shall be issued until the moratorium has expired. I think you mean for auto lots, open lot storage, but perhaps you ought to specifically say that. For open lot storage of motor vehicles shall be issued by the town until the moratorium is expired. Just to kind of clean it up and remove doubt so that we don't have people fighting about this 6 months or a year from now about what it really meant. I'm not aware of any open lot storage of bicycles in town, but you never know.
Can I ask
It could be coming.
It could be.
all the rage? Can I ask Mr. Hearn a question?
Yes.
You want to say motor vehicles?
Yeah.
Would that include
What about a Tesla?
bobcats?
It's electric.
I mean, you know what I mean? Do we need to be that specific? Or motor vehicles, regardless of size? I don't know, I guess.
No, I think Mr. Hearn's right that in specifying motor vehicles, because open lot storage, you could have mulch piles, that's open lot storage. There are other things that are considered open lot storage. I mean, the mulch piles is a perfect example. One went to up on
University.
Everett Street, you know, that was used, Holman's Farm was used as a, you know, that they used to store, you know, gravel and as an open lot storage. It was the use more than the product, I think, was up there. So I think specifying it probably is the right way to go.
But I think you've got to say motor vehicles too, at least.
So a
eliminate
motor vehicle
other
is
types.
across the board. It's just a motorized vehicle. Doesn't matter size, weight, type, anything.
Well,
That
if
should
you
suffice.
want to
That should suffice.
change that, you can consider it, but I'm not proposing to make it,
Any more
you know,
difficult than that?
carve out exceptions.
Okay.
I'm just, and I'm not proposing anything really other than to say, I
Make
think
it
you ought to add some
Okay.
words here and there to
The
clarify.
intent is there. that-
Right.
Yeah,
that they know
and I
that.
apologize, I didn't say page 2, I'm used to reading only one side of the paper in my work.
Trying to save trees.
We're trying to save
The
trees.
trees were already dead, we're just putting them to good use.
There's a flyer up there for Earth Day. I don't know if you saw.
There's a big tree on the Haddon Street. We're gonna
Oh, Jesus.
Later on. That's all. I mean, I think it's an interesting issue, and I think fixing Route 1 would go a long way to solving this problem and take some of the pressure off the other areas, and then maybe deal with it a different way down the road.
I think we are in agreement on that, and that's
One
what we
other
intend to
question
do.
before you
I
let
do
go.
like what you've said. I think it does tighten it up, and I'm for those changes.
Yeah, as I say, the excluding Route 1 is something to think about. It might go beyond what anybody's really thought about, but listening to the gentleman a moment ago, it's like, gee, if somebody sets up on Route 1, and if they're in a manufacturing zone that didn't have an existing permit, they're not going to be able to do business because you have eliminated any opportunity to get those permits. So why exclude Route 1 when Route 1 is not really the problem?
Right.
The problem is, in the eyes of some people, is all these other lots.
Ernie, this was your proposal. Are you in favor of those changes?
I am, actually.
And- Yes.
Explain to me what that means, excluding Route 1.
The moratorium would not apply to Route 1.
So,
The property.
If you border,
If
anyone
you
who
border
borders,
Route 1.
anything
Your
that
address
borders
is-
is on Route 1.
okay, but why do you want to put that in? Because they don't store cars on their, I mean, they get a,
They
get
do.
They need-
right, but they get, when they come to either us or zoning, us if they're building, zoning if
Yeah.
they automatic, I mean,
No,
not
they don't.
automatically.
They need a permit for open lot
Right.
storage.
They do.
And they
Yeah,
get that.
is
This would
correct.
prohibit that.
This would he's right.
Yeah.
This
He's up.
bylaw change would prohibit that, and so nobody could get a new permit even on Route 1. And that seems a little bit of overreaching and a little bit unfair.
Right.
If somebody wants to take over a business that didn't have a permit, devote some property, again, it's only in the manufacturing zone that you can do it anyway. And large parts of Route, I mean, the crazy thing about Route 1 is that there are large sections of Route 1 where you cannot have retail without a special permit.
So let's say I know it's down the road, it kind of has something to do with this, but not really. All right, so we rezone, which we've all talked about ad nauseum, and I do agree that it needs to be done. So we rezone it. Are the car dealers then going to take their cars off the lots that are what do you call
Probably
them?
not.
I don't know. So
Well,
they
I
will.
mean,
And I'm not
would that-
speaking for them.
I understand that, but I'm
it's
kind
a
of just
st-
planting that seed out there.
No, but it's a start.
Okay.
You reduce the need, as the chairman or Mr. Petrikowski said a few minutes ago, more dealers selling more cars, need more inventory coming in, need more places to put them. If you make those places available on Route 1 by rezoning Route 1, you take the pressure off of them going to find other spots in other zones, including some of the ones we've been spending some months talking about. So you remove the need for that by fixing Route 1. In the meantime, I just don't think the moratorium should apply to Route 1. I think that doesn't really attack the problem that people are concerned.
I'd make those. I'd be in favor of making those changes. We could have Patrick or Paul reword it.
Yeah.
So the Route 1. If your property is on Route 1 or that type of thing. I think Mr. Hearn makes a lot of sense, and he's certainly been on the other side of the table for many, many years on this kind of thing and understands it, and I tend to agree with it.
Okay. Well,
Thank you. That's
Thank
all.
you.
Just personal
Thank you, Mr.
comments.
Resident.
As a resident, as a taxpayer, as a business owner.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Haley.
Hand out the microphone.
Sure.
Ann Haley, District 4. I have been watching this progress for over several years, and the more and more cars that we see parked in lots within neighborhoods. And I had at one point in time a discussion with Mr. Halleck, and it revolved around using parking garages. And because we were talking about the heat that is generated from an asphalt parking lot, and so in your studies, I would suggest that maybe you take under consideration allowing the car dealerships to use parking garages. I've had this discussion with a couple of people, and I think that this is maybe a time that the town would accept the use of parking garages for these reasons. And I'm not saying put parking garages in the neighborhoods. I'm saying put them allow them on Route 1, so all the cars are on Route 1, not in the neighborhoods. That's it. Thank you.
That's something that we have been discussing, And they
Brilliant.
say it's expensive and so on and so forth, but we want to pursue that when we do sit down with the dealers. And we'd also like to see them have buildings that don't look like your typical parking garage.
The one thing that would be a plus for the dealerships is that their cars are out in neighborhoods and they're protected somewhat, but I happen to have been related to somebody that was within the parking or the car dealership area, and they lose a lot of parts. They lose tires, they lose the backs of their trucks, they lose plows and things like that. A parking garage could be locked and people would find it a little harder to walk away with all those parts.
I think definitely it's on the table.
Okay.
20 years ago, maybe, might not have been, but I think it's definitely today's world, it's on the table.
Yes, ma'am. In the back.
Hello, my name is Karen Holman. I live up on Everett Street in Norwood. Hello, good evening. Fortunately, we live in Norwood, and which has a lot of commercial and business properties. And that keeps our residential real estate taxes lower than some of our surrounding towns, for example, Westwood. Unfortunately, because we live in Norwood, you can expect that if you live next to or near to an underutilized property, chances are there will be cars parked on it or condos and apartments built on it. And people who are having problems with car dealers or having problems with them parking in your area, they can work with the car dealers to have some of these problems remedied. For example, if you want no car carriers to drop off because they're being noisy overnight, that can be worked with the dealer. And the dealer will make concessions because they don't want a lot of aggravation. And you're talking about Westwood not allowing cars to park on Route 1. There really is no spot on Route 1 or no space on Route 1 that will accommodate cars in Westwood. Route 1 in Westwood is a small area and there's a lot of swamps and there's not a lot of room to park cars. So it's not that these dealers can't park cars in Westwood, it's just they don't want to because any area that's off of Route 1 costs a lot of money and car dealers don't like to spend a lot of money. So I don't really wish for a moratorium for a blanket amount of time to happen. I think the idea of you coming up for a permit and speaking to the board and being judged on a separate basis as to yes or no you're going to allow this permit is the way to go. When you put a blanket moratorium on things, sometimes it does affect business and it does affect people's lives. And when you put a moratorium on things, there is no recourse. It's like, that's it, no, until such and such a day. So the idea of coming before the board, stating your case, and getting a permit, yes or no, is always the way it has been, and it should probably allow like that. And I understand that, yes, the idea of changing the zoning on Route 1 is a great idea, and we should work on that instead. Thank you.
Ms. Holt, just one thing. When I said Westwood doesn't allow, they actually do. If you go, they have a very small lot that they allow it in. If you go down behind Frugal Fanny's,
Yes.
down there,
Yeah.
tell me, I don't know the name of the road or whatever, but Wade,
Wilson Way.
they do allow they have a small lot down there. I think there's a Mercedes parked down in there. And,
Yeah, that's
but
my-
you're not
my-
gonna, Westwood's not gonna allow you to put it on Clappertree Street or High Street or anywhere else in their town. That's it. That's their spot. And, I think, and to your point, for years, dealers, all the dealers that you see parked in satellite lots now have come before the board and we work with them.
Right.
The latest one is down on, Short Street and South Norwood, and, it took us 6 months to get that and working with the dealer, and, we do put conditions on what times they can deliver
Correct.
cars, and we appreciate you, bringing that up, but that's the way it's always been, and it goes through a process, but we're kind of, we gotta kind of just look at it a little tighter now and just see what, do we limit it to Norwood car dealers, things like that? Where on Route 1 can we, is this allowed, that kind of thing, so.
Okay, well, thank you all for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you. Mr. Hearn?
Mr. Chairman, one comment. Ms. Haley mentioned, I think, the idea of building structures. I think that's allowed under the bylaw now. I don't think you need to change it. They're storage warehouses. And I think that could be done. But what the problem with it is the expense of doing it. That's what discourages the dealers from doing it. But they're nothing more than storage warehouses that are allowed in several of the districts of the town. If there were a way to do it less expensively, some of them would be more interested. We've had a problem in this town with not authorizing parking garages, but these are not parking garages. A parking garage is for registered vehicles owned by separate individuals for a short-term basis. A warehouse is where somebody puts his or her goods or inventory.
Well, that's what we're looking at. We're looking to do that.
I think it could be authorized, some of it could be done as a matter of right now, but it's the cost of doing it. I've had people look at some of the properties, some of the buildings up on Everett Street, but the cost of the real estate, the buildings is just too great to justify storing their vehicles in.
I think we've allowed in my 15 years, we have authorized 2 parking garages. One was at the hospital that never got built, and one was at 4 Point Sheraton, and they never built theirs either, but they were permitted.
Okay.
You got Debbie.
Debbie, yes.
I believe that one of the reasons when Ernie suggested the moratorium was, I understand that the garages are more expensive and we need to do something. Clear cutting 7 acres of land to park cars on, I don't find acceptable. I don't think it's, whether it's a tree thing or whether it's we're not getting any tax dollars, or whether it's the whole big picture of it. One of the reasons, in my opinion, that they don't let you park cars in Westwood is because their land's worth too much money. So I might be a little sick of being the stepchild here. Okay, so they want to park their cars. If we put up storage, what did Mr. Hearn call them? Storage warehouse. Storage warehouses. I understand that that's going to cost the car dealers a little more money. It'll cost more money. It will, but if we don't do something, we have been chasing cars, we have been driving Mark crazy, we have said move them, we don't want to chase you out, but they want to park it on dirt where they clear cut 7 acres of land and blacktop and runoff, and we want them to put up the building like on the J-Way. Could we come to some kind of compromise? And I think putting a moratorium on will maybe bring everybody to the table. So that's my comment for the evening.
Okay.
Ernie's thinking he's going to hold me.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet wants to speak? And anyone else? Yes.
Hi, first of all, I'm very much in favor of this moratorium. Second thing is that I think the planning board just approved the property on Everett Avenue, and now 700 cars are going to be in there.
That was the zoning board of appeals.
I meant the zoning board, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. And I think Westwood only uses special permits, and I think it is limited to a certain area in the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Anything further from the board? Seeing none, we could be closing the.
Take a motion to close the public hearing.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Do I have a second to close the
I'll
public
second it.
hearing? I have a second. Anything further on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's 5-0. The public hearing is closed. Thank you on that.
Chairman, do we need a motion to, or Patrick, or do we need a motion to incorporate the changes?
I would appreciate that. I think, I guess the question is, are we ready to vote on this tonight?
Or do we,
And we could include that if that's,
Why
that would
don't
be part of
we-
the motion.
then, I'll just make the suggestion, Mr. Chairman, that we table our vote until the planners can work the changes into the motion, and we can see the motion in its entirety.
Okay.
Do you follow me? Let them reword it, and then we can see a hard copy. And we can we would make a motion to for a recommendation, actually, right?
All right, I guess the question is, should we not have closed the public hearing?
No, we can close the public hearing.
And we already,
We
we all know what we're gonna be putting in there, so,
Yeah.
okay, so that's fine.
Before we make a recommendation, then I'd like to see after the planners get a chance to incorporate some of the changes we talked about tonight.
I think if you made a motion, that would be prudent
For that reason,
to include those changes,
and for a recommendation or to hold off on voting?
for a recommendation.
To make,
We
you
can
wanna
hold,
make, you wanna,
we can hold off on voting if you like.
well, the recommendation would be voting at town meeting. We're gonna make a recommendation at town meeting, that we're either in favor
We
of
do
the
have to-
motion,
we-
or not. So I would suggest that we hold off to the next meeting until we see the final draft
Okay.
and then we can then at that time, we'll vote for a recommendation to town meeting.
Yes, that's what
Okay.
I thought you meant.
That's-
I think what you mean is to just recommend that not the recommendation part, the formal recommendation that we're gonna make to the town meeting, but you're gonna have our professionals make the changes that
And then
we
we'll
discussed.
look at a hard copy of the draft and we'll make it at that point, so.
That's fine, that's
Okay,
fine.
that's all.
I will say, I know, I believe all articles need to be, I think, approved by the selectmen to be on the warrant, I think, for their next meeting on Tuesday?
This
I think-
Tuesday?
Maybe not this Tuesday, but I think the
Following Tuesday?
Yeah, I'll have to double check on that, but I know
We don't
that's-
have another meting before that.
So we have to have recommendations in by then? No.
No, no recommendations, no,
No.
but if you want to see a revised version, I think our next meeting is the 11th, and I believe...
Our next meeting is the 8th.
Is it the 8th? Okay, never mind, yes, so the 8th. I believe the selectmen are putting that on the warrant before then.
So, all we have to do is tell the selectmen that
We're presenting the
we're
article.
gonna present the article,
Okay,
that
A
we're
placeholder?
that we're gonna go forward with the article.
okay, yep,
And then we'll make our recommendation at the next meeting.
Okay.
And you'll see
That
the
makes
final,
sense.
you'll see the
Right.
final.
Right, but
Okay.
we want the Board of Selectmen to know that we're gonna move forward with the article.
okay, cool.
That's why I had asked you this.
Okay, so we should make a motion.
All right, then I'll make a,
We
all
are
right,
to move forward,
then,
we are
all
gonna make
right,
the changes
let's
here.
do it official. I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we notify the Board of Selectmen that the planning board is gonna go forward with the article to town meeting,
And with the recommended
with the
changes.
recommended changes, and we'll make our recommendation at the next meeting, our formal recommendation.
That sounds good.
Seconded.
And we have it seconded.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a 5-0. And Patrick, you have those changes?
Yep.
Okay, great.
We need another,
The next item is a public hearing, zoning bylaw amendment for April 25th, 2019 special town meeting, amendment to section 4.0 dimensional requirements, subsection 4.1.2 notes to table of dimensional requirements. The clerk will read the public notice, hearing notice.
In accordance with the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Norwood Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 26, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. in the Norwood Civic Center, 165 Manhattan Street, on the second floor of the Willett Room. The purpose of the public hearing is to accept public comments on a zoning bylaw amendment to Section 4.0, dimensional requirements, subsection 4.1.2, notes to table of dimensional requirements. The draft zoning bylaw amendment proposes to reduce the amount of land area required for multifamily residential uses in the central business district. apartment district, general business district, highway business district, and limited business district. The draft zoning bylaw amendment is on file in the planning department at the town hall and may be reviewed during normal business hours.
Thank you. Okay. Now, this article, I believe it came out of some discussion with the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's it may be slightly different from what they had recommended, but I think it was put together to satisfy what they saw as something that should be corrected in the bylaws. And what they want to do is allow, the problem was that they did have some projects that came in front of them, and they thought they were good projects, but the density for those dwellings were a little too far off from the restrictions we have now. And even though that they were good projects, they declined to go forward with at least one of them at one time. And I think they eventually did go forward with it when it came back. But they did want us to change this so that they wouldn't be straying too far from what the dimensional requirements are at this point for density in the areas listed here. Patrick, do you have anything else on this?
Yeah, so essentially what we've done is increase the capacity for density from what was about 11 units per acre to 16 units per acre across those 5 districts. A developer is still going to have to go through the same regulatory process of meeting with the Zoning Board of Appeals to get their special permit. We'll still have to ask for a variance if need be. The reason to, I guess, to reduce the square footage requirement mainly had to do with having it be more palatable for allowing possible multifamily structures. So before, there was an opinion that at the 11 units per acre, that was just a very a hardline number for them to consider for potential developments. I think by increasing it to 16, it allows them to kind of look at it with a little bit more leeway than they would have before. But that being said, it's still the same process is involved as it was before. A developer is still going to have to meet with the zoning board. Site plan review is still going to have to go through us. All that's really changing is just that it's allowing it to be a little bit more palatable for them to consider a potential development.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Debbie?
Anybody else?
Go right ahead. Ladies first.
Thank you. This is a change from our original packet, right? Because this is now going to be how am I going to put this without? Okay, this is going to be under the heading of the zoning board, correct? Because it's not going to trigger us because it's less units, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so, right?
For a special permit for multifamily housing, it still goes through the zoning board.
Correct. So
Yeah.
this was what we all went in front of the selectmen about, and Mr. Spence was discussing, right? Because we took this out of the big 28-page package that you put together, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, I'm just trying to be clear here. Is it clear as mud? So the numbers, we took it out of our package, but did these numbers change at all? Because I didn't bring the old package that these,
The issue came up at the
Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen,
Yeah.
and basically the table requirement says that across these 5 different districts, you do about 11 units per acre, and it wasn't enough to incentivize development as they intended. So they're bumping it up to 16 units per acre in these 5 districts to try to provide some opportunity for reinvestment in certain properties. As far as the approval process, it's the same as, it's all defined in the table of use. And it's the Board of Appeals that would have to approve by special permit,
Okay.
whether it's 11 or 16.
All right, I guess my question is, when we started this has been going on for a while. So
It's
we
new to
start-
me, but I just
Right.
learned about it.
So,
Did we start at 11 and we bumped it up to 16?
yeah, so originally, the concern was that when when
Right, well, they
property
weren't gonna
owners
make
did-
enough money.
Not so
And-
much that, but when property owners within the central business district met with Paul and I last
Making
year.
money isn't a bad thing.
Yeah. They met with us last year. We notified them of footnote 2, which was the table you're looking at, and essentially they could add stories to their structure if they wanted, but they would have to comply with that 10,000 square feet and then 3,500 per each additional dwelling unit. So multifamily housing was always allowed, but the density requirements for that were far too, strict for them to be able to really do. And so that kind of initiated everything with working with Ted and what we have with the mixed-use overlay district. And this is originally kind of what we intended to change, as well as creating the mixed-use overlay district. So this is more or less allowing for potential growth for developers on a far more, I guess, palatable or reasonable
The
level.
other thing is that the minimum lot, the average lot size in the central business district downtown is much less than 10,000 square feet. It's more about
Yeah.
5,000 or 6,000. So basically, it really eliminates a lot of opportunity across the board for most.
Right, I think that's a little bit of the confusion, because I've talked to people who have watched both the selectmen meeting and watched some of our meetings, and when you say we're allowing so much per acre, none of us, me included, can kind of get my head around, we're talking about it's a little building, but it still breaks down mathematically, which I'm a little challenged on.
Division.
You gotta divide it, it gets a little complicated, but this is basically what we're saying, that as you break it down, it's gonna be
Yeah.
16 units per
It
acre.
comes out to
but
16.
We're talking about 6,000 square feet of a footprint, basically, in some of these buildings.
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, basically, a lot of them cover the whole lot.
Right, I mean, I'm just gonna say Perks, because I go there all the time. So is that footprint 6,000 square feet, maybe? I wouldn't say much more than that, even back, so they go up,
Yep.
we're giving their density up,
Right,
okay.
right.
But there was still the height restriction.
No, I understand.
That's in the existing bylaw.
Right, but I've gotten a lot of questions from out there in the real world, and I get asked, where's there an acre? Well, we have to say something, but it's not per
Yeah.
acre, it's just a dense, and I'm not explaining it properly, so. Do you
Well,
guys?
if it's a half-acre lot, they're gonna get 8 units.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
I
I
mean,
have
think
a
of it
You have
that,
to, you have to,
Mr. Chairman. just-
Yes.
On that, just so people, it covers numerous districts. So it's not just a central business district. And a lot of this came out of a little bit of frustration with the zoning board of appeals. One was a project that I think everyone who looked at the project thought it was a great project, was the old Sandstone property on Washington Street.
Next to Rama.
And it just couldn't, it wouldn't work because of that. I go back 2 years ago, there's above the jewelry store downtown, there used to be dentist office and stuff. The landlord wanted to put in like 3 one-bedroom apartments up there, which would have made a ton of sense. But, when you go 10,000, 3,500 feet, it precludes anybody from doing that. And I think to Patrick's point, and we'll get into that a little bit more when Ted does his, with the central businesses, as developers come to Norwood and say, boy, we'd love to do something, and then you give them this zoning requirement, the numbers just don't work, and they move on. They move on to Dedham or Walpole or Islington or Medfield or where it's a little bit so, we're not asking for, we're not saying, oh, we want more apartments, which I don't have a problem with, but this will give the zoning board of appeals a little bit more of a a range in which to make a decision. You know, if something's a really good project, like I think the one on, personally, I think the Sandstone property was a really good project and would have cleaned up that area and been a nice project, they, in the heart of hearts of the zoning board of appeals, no matter how good they thought the project was, they just, to the letter of the law, they just couldn't approve it because they didn't have the leeway. Now, if it was a lousy project, they could still turn it down, but I mean, they were really hamstrung, is that the word I'm looking for here, by that, you know, that, so I think that this, this just gives the zoning board of appeals a little bit more wiggle room to take a really nice project and accept it, and I think that's basically the premise of this. Doesn't mean they're gonna have to approve it, it just means it gives them a little more wiggle room to look at a project that is really a good project, but under today's dimensional requirements, just can't do it.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? I'm going to open up to the public. Any comments from anyone from the public? Just raise your hand and we'll call on you, and you can just give your name and address.
Hi, Kim Dansby, Maple Street, Green Maple. Is this 16 units to allow vertical, or would it be 16 separate footprints of buildings within an acre?
The latter.
Okay. So
No, excuse me.
They can go up.
No, they can go up.
they could go up, but not necessarily 16. Like, it's not going from allowing 11 units on an acre to 16.
Excuse me, I think it would depend on what's allowed in that district. So if single-family homes are allowed in that district, then it is possible they could do 16 units per acre, like little cottages or something like that. But more likely, it's going to be mixed use or apartment buildings or condominiums.
But it's in downtown, it's in specific districts, it's not
Yes.
in a neighborhood.
Right.
Yes.
It's not in any of the residential
It's
neighborhoods.
downtown, what do we call
Business
them?
districts.
Business districts. So,
Highway
so
business.
it's in
So if you had
business districts, highway business, and limited business.
if you had a quarter-acre lot in one of those districts, you could put you could put a mixed use, you could put a store on the first floor, and you could put 4 units above it. I mean, if it's a quarter-acre lot.
Still have to meet the height and the parking
Yeah,
requirements.
you still have to, all the underlying zoning stays. So whatever's there now, as far as height requirements and things like that, still stay. We're not changing any of those, we're just changing the dimension of the footprint of what's allowed for residents.
Any further questions on this issue? Yes?
I just think it's too dense, I really do. Are you changing the town of Norwood into the city of Norwood?
We don't believe so, no. We're just,
I mean, even down at the property across from Guarinos, where the law stated that 6 townhouses were applicable, the approval came for 12. I mean, if you have 26,000 square feet, which is what they had, and then they needed 48,000 square feet, and then it gets okay. I mean, like, everything seems to be more and more and more dense in the town. And that's what's gonna happen in the downtown. I think some of the ideas on the thing is fine, but the height is higher than the regular thing for downtown.
no, the height is,
45.
no, the height is the same.
What is the height?
Depends on where it is.
40.
It depends on what
40 feet.
district.
40
40
feet.
feet.
40 feet.
So Mr. Petrucci's building is the max height.
Mr.
Right.
Petrucci's.
Yeah, that's
okay.
the max height.
Right.
Nobody could go higher
But
than that.
how many units can he put in there?
Well, I don't know what the square footage is. May I? Can I?
Yes.
I understand. Downtown is a ghost town. and it shouldn't be. We got a great downtown.
Oh, I know, we have to change.
And I think we've tried this, we've tried that, we're not gonna get a big store, we're gonna get little stores. I do believe Dedham is vibrant, and part of that is all those extra buildings they've got. So, if, instead of building giant complexes, if we can entice these landlords to do something with these buildings, because they just let them sit, we get shops that come and go, 6 months, 8 months, you know, that's why they put up these little signs that cost $500. I think, Judith, we need to think outside the box. And for small apartments downtown, and I'll touch the third rail, they're not gonna do it unless they make some money. They don't, that's the bottom line.
Developers here in this town are making an obscene profit. They really are.
Right,
You
but
can see
let's,
what's happening all over the place.
okay, but let's just fight about downtown now. We can't, the downtown is,
This is more than just downtown, Mrs. Holman, so.
well, downtown, I mean, downtown, business district.
But all of this here, you're talking about this, aren't you talking about this sheet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
It's more than downtown, that's correct.
Right, it's more than downtown. So the density, in my opinion, is too much.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further?
Excuse me, it might be helpful, when I'm gonna present some slides, and I'm gonna show you some examples of what's downtown today in terms of the density and, you know, where there's apartments or condos. So it might be helpful to see, some real examples of projects that are there today.
No,
and what the
I
density is.
I know what's going on. Here's Dedham Square. I just came back from Alexandria, Virginia. I came back from Arlington, Virginia. So I know what's going on around town. A lot of the things that in this, that they have done a wonderful job for Dedham, and I admire them. But they do have an advisory board, a very strict advisory board. They also have a steering committee. So a lot of this things that are going on, we know about it, but we really think for the town of Norwood, it's too dense. And you know what? You have to think of, we're having problems with the schools as now. What are you gonna do with all of these people? Not everybody is a millennial, but I do understand, because even here in Boston Magazine, the millennials are moving out. But they're not coming to Norwood, and you probably want them to come to Norwood, but they're going to different towns with different amenities, etc. So we understand, but
I just like
anyway.
to say I can't afford to live
Your
in
name,
Norwood. I
excuse
live
me,
in
excuse me,
Please.
through the board, in your name,
Kate Hasselfuss, 283 Manhattan Street.
thank you.
I'd just like to say that I'm a single mom. I live at my mom's, and I can't afford to live in Norwood. And it's just ridiculous, in my opinion, because I want to raise my son in Norwood. I lived in Norwood my whole life, and I just think it's ridiculous of pricing. I want to try to go down to Woonsocket, which is probably terrible because it's Woonsocket, whatever, but I can't afford to live in the town of Norwood, so I basically just want to say that it's just very expensive, and I'm kind of stuck where I'm at, so I just thought I'd let you know that being a single parent, it's very difficult. So I just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments anywhere? Seeing none, are we ready to
make a
close the
mo-
public hearing? That's the next one. This is a different, this is on dimensional requirements.
Okay.
The next one will be the mixed use, which will be the presentation.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a 5-0, closed public hearing. Is anyone prepared to vote on this tonight? I don't see a reason why we couldn't. There's nothing, it's pretty straightforward.
And it
Would
was
you
a
like to vote?
consensus of the boards, we got together.
so it's
I'm ready to
separate from
vote.
this?
It's
Yes, it
it's a
is.
Separate
Yes.
article, Deb.
Okay.
So we want to just, if we can get this
Okay.
article,
You ready to vote? Okay.
okay. I'll accept a motion to approve,
Or recommend.
to recommend to the town meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman, that planning board recommends a favorable recommendation to town meeting on this article.
Regarding the table of dimension requirement
Right.
changes.
No changes?
We don't have an article number, so,
Okay, so we know it's a table of dimensional requirements, and that we know what that is this one here. And so, all in
Second.
favor, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0.
We'll get the movie?
Get the movie?
Okay, next up is another public hearing, zoning bylaw amendment for April 25th, 2019, special town meeting, amendment section 9.4, mixed-use overlay district, or MUOD. The clerk will read the public hearing notice.
in accordance with the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Norwood Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 26, 2019, at 7:30. The purpose of the public hearing is to accept public comments on a draft amendment to Section 9.0 Special District Regulations, subsection 9.4, Downtown Apartment Overlay District, or MUOD. The proposed mixed-use overlay district is to encourage mixed-use commercial on the ground floor and residential development on the second and third floors in the central business district. The draft zoning bylaw amendment is on file in the planning board at the town hall and may be reviewed during normal business hours.
Okay, we're going to have a presentation tonight. Before I do that, I just want to, we do have a memo that Patrick has sent us, and this is just to let everyone know that this will be discussed further. Tonight, we have the planning board public hearing, which we're about to begin, but the Friends of Norwood Center Downtown Stakeholder Meeting, that is going to be Thursday, March 28th at 7 p.m. at the Old Colonial Cafe. The one for town meeting members will be Wednesday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. here in the Willett Room at the Civic Center at 165 Manhattan Street. Thank you. I'm going to move on.
And Ted, are you doing all this?
What's that?
You're doing these two also? You're doing a presentation of those two?
I'm doing it, I think so, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So,
Oh, there you go.
that's for the candy folks. Yeah.
It's a close one.
It's a close one.
Is there a way to fix the focus?
Want backwards off too?
There you go.
Want those off? You okay back there?
Okay. Made them all off, or do you want to come backwards?
Oh, you can't see that, can you?
Can
Does that help you?
Can you still see the board?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's still
Okay.
bright. Yeah.
You got
Okay.
enough light, Deb?
Yeah, I'm fine. All right, so my name's Ted Brovitz. I am working with the town. I've been working with the planning department and the planning board since probably, well, since last summer anyways. They asked me to look at the opportunity for mixed use and residential development in the downtown area. And so that's what we've been doing for the last several months. And we sort of have a series of parameters in doing this process. This has been brought up before in many plans and reports and even past zoning proposals. So basically our parameters is that we want to protect and preserve our historic character in downtown if we're going to go forward with this type of development. We want to encourage renovation of existing buildings. We want to encourage reinvestment in older dilapidated properties that are underutilized. And we want to make sure certainly that there's adequate parking if there's going to be new development of any kind actually. And we want to make sure that we are integrating good quality open spaces. You'll see a lot of zoning regulations out there that don't have any specific standards for open space. It's really important in a downtown setting that we add to the mix of open spaces with our common, with the outdoor dining areas and those sort of places, informal places where people can gather and enjoy, our walking environment. So those are sort of our outline, our our goals in putting this together. And this is really building off the downtown master plan that was done about 5 or 6 years ago, and made a series of recommendations for all types of strategic actions to market the downtown and build up the downtown. And one of those things being looking at the zoning and what can we do to enhance opportunities for reinvestment in mixed use. And the idea is really to let people have the opportunity to live in downtown and possibly work in downtown and take advantage of all the shops and the restaurants. And one of the issues facing Norwood, as is in many suburban communities, is that housing is expensive and it's out of reach for a lot of folks, including people that are just starting out. And what we're looking at here is sort of trying to diversify our housing stock, which is primarily large single-family homes, like in many communities, by giving people the opportunity in the downtown area to have smaller units, whether they're condominiums or apartments, and again, live in that work, live, play environment, but also have the opportunity to become part of the community. And that's not only for young people, it's for older people that may be in a 3 or 4 bedroom house, and the kids are grown and gone away, like mine will be in the next 5 years, and looking to stay in the community, but not necessarily in a big house where you have to mow the yard and that sort of thing. So basically it's creating more opportunity, more housing choices for people that are already here, in addition to those millennials that might end up in here because we are connected to Boston through the MBTA system. So that's really where the foundation of that master plan was. And so this is the current zoning here. So really the primary area that we're talking about is a central business district. Obviously Washington Street is the central spine, but it includes areas like Central Street and the northern side of Broadway. And so it also goes over the tracks onto this section of Lenox Street. And beyond that, you've got the general business district in pink, and then sort of that peach color is the manufacturing district. And then to the north, you've got the general residential, single-family residential districts. Yes. Yep, and go back.
Okay, that is included. Okay, the next
Yeah,
slide shows that
yeah.
that
So
down on the left is included.
right. So the overlay district we're talking about, the mixed-use overlay district, incorporates the entire central business district, but also is taking in a small section of Broadway on the south side of the district, which is I think it's in manufacturing or general business.
That would be like where Sandstone's property is, that side of
Right,
Broadway.
just basically going up to the rail
railroad
track.
tracks.
Right. And also taking in, which is also part of the central business district, Lenox Street over here. So basically, it's primarily the central business district. What we're trying to do with this is protect, any kind of development that might occur against the neighborhoods to the north by this transitional buffer zone, which requires a larger setback, smaller buildings. Understanding that, we want this to be a healthy mixed-use district, but at the same time, we want to make sure that it's compatible with our neighbors. So this is a basic zoning map here. But before we got to putting together all the standards, all the bylaw materials, we went back and looked at what we have today in the central business district. So we did a full analysis of all the properties, and we found that there's actually, even though mixed use is not allowed, and apartments or multifamily is allowed, but it's a very small, and it's very lower density. We found that there's 43 residential or mixed-use properties, and there's actually almost 300 dwelling units in the downtown area currently. So mixed use has really been there for a long time, and it's well ingrained. So if in terms of density, I know you're concerned about density. That density is a dirty word in planning, but the reality is that things that are new, you would expect those to be fairly dense. So like Lenox Station is about 30 units per acre. 30 dwelling units per acre. The Crossing is 52 dwelling units per acre. But other places like the Follen Block, that's very dense too because it's a small lot, and there's relatively a large number of units in there on that small lot. Olivardi's is 41 units per acre. That doesn't feel dense though. I mean, it's a 3-story building. You get a nice restaurant on the main level, and you got 14, 16 apartments above that. And it's comfortable. It really sort of fits in with the rest of downtown. So density is a sort of a misunderstood number. I told you that we're talking about allowing density of 40 units per acre across these 5 business districts. People would be nervous, and probably rightfully so. So density is a relative term, and it has to be done properly. I mean, that's really the key now. And this bylaw is replacing what's currently called the Downtown Apartment Overlay District, which has similar density to what we're proposing here, but it doesn't have the standards that encourage and require quality development. So that's really what we're trying to do. So in trying to understand the potential impact this might have on our downtown area, we started identifying properties where you could see different types of development. And the areas in pink are all one-story buildings. There's beautiful old commercial liner buildings along Washington Street, where you might see not redevelopment, but development up above these one-story buildings. You may add a second floor and put 3 or 4 units in there above the commercial space on the ground level. And then there are other areas such as along Central Street and along the Broadway and even Lenox, where you might see some redevelopment over time. Now, no one's saying you have to redevelop, but we are saying you have an opportunity now where you don't have it today. And so if you start looking at what's a good model, here's all of ours, again 41 units per acre. A nice restaurant down low, and you've got 3-story building. I'm not sure what the actual height is, but it's it's 30 feet at least, maybe more when you get up to the corner here. And you got, I think, 14 units above that. So what we did is we created a model out of that, a 3-dimensional model out of that, so we could understand it, and we could break it down, and we could use it to test against other developments that might happen in and around the downtown area. So if you look at a lot of these one-story buildings, here's 3 that are grouped together between 611 and 629 Washington Street. Are there opportunities to allow upper floor additions to these buildings? And that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, these are old buildings, so structurally it's a real challenge with some of these buildings to do that. But there are going to be opportunities to do it as well. What we don't want to happen is to lose these historic facades. And well, maybe not this one, but for the most part, we've got nice, beautiful one-story facades, and we want to make sure we keep it intact because it's creating this really nice enclosure on Washington Street, and it's pedestrian-oriented. It's got nice window space. They're well designed. They're interesting for pedestrians that are walking by. People pour out with their tables and chairs, and we want to encourage more of that. So we don't want to lose that fabric. I mean, that's really important. And the reason we have these one-story buildings is that we were part of a streetcar system, and basically Washington Street was sort of an elongated commercial corridor, and the neighborhoods were behind it, and the mills were behind it. So basically, you get on that streetcar and you take it down to the mill, and you go here and get something to eat, and you go back and forth on Washington Street. So we've got this nice stock of beautiful one-story commercial liner buildings, and here's one of the pictures of the old streetcars, or the elm trees. We don't have any elm trees anymore, like a lot of New England towns. Here's a shot of the common in, today, 50 years later, where the trees are all grown in. But we started to look at, do we have any examples where these one-story buildings have been added to? In fact, we do. This is at the corner here, and next to the theater. And the second story was added to it back in 2005. So it has happened here. So what we wanted to do is sort of look at, all right, if we were take a typical one-story historic commercial building and add to it, what might it look like? Here's a fallen building. Here's the theater, and here's 99 Central Street, Elizabeth, and add a second story to it. Where you might have 4 or 5 units in there.
Excuse me, that's not the fallen building. The fallen building is on Dial.
That's Elizabeth's.
Elizabeth's on the right.
This is Elizabeth, yeah.
The other building's not the fallen building.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I had a mistake.
I don't think it has
I thought it did have a name. Well, maybe not. Somehow I get that mixed up. I'm sorry about that. Folden Building's on the left?
On Washington Street.
Okay.
It's at the corner of Giles in Washington.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Here's another example of 483 Washington, Titanes. And, they're actually, this is a previous upper floor addition right here. But what's the possibility of adding, some more, another level to the rest of the building? So there are opportunities, and that's really what we're trying to point out, that, we would encourage, reinvestment in some of these older properties, where the property owners may be struggling today to keep commercial tenants in the ground level. And we don't want those to be turned into residential at the ground level, because that really sort of ruins the cluster of commercial activity on Washington Street, but we would want it to be up above. And that would give people, again, we diversify the housing choices, let people live and work in the downtown area, and it's also built-in customers for the ground floor businesses. So, again, what would it look like if we were at a second floor to these old liner buildings? So in addition to, trying to encourage incentivizing that sort of reinvestment in our historic properties, we also want to look at, what might happen with some of these older, buildings from the 50s and 60s and 70s that are, in some cases, in pretty bad shape and don't really match the fabric that we have on Washington Street, which is, very pedestrian oriented. This is more sort of laid out, Broadway and Lenox and Central for, car access. You've got the parking lots in front of the buildings. You don't have any streetscape. You've got limited sidewalks. You have a lot of curb cuts. So it's not a really friendly place to walk. And if we're going to build a place where, there's more business opportunity as well as residential opportunity, it's got to be a nice setting like we have on Washington Street. So this is sort of a different type of development that you might see. Again, commercial, open curb cuts and parking in front of the buildings. So in this case, you might see, sort of a, block by block, development over time, where you'd have a mix of different buildings. You'd have central parking where it's all organized and shared parking between the different buildings. You'd have access points for pedestrians between the buildings. You'd build up a nice streetscape, put on-street parking. And this could be a mix of, residential buildings and some commercial and mixed-use buildings and so on. But basically, it's taking what essentially is, underutilized strip development in some cases and consolidating that into a larger mixed-use block. Again, nice streetscapes, street trees, and areas, for people to sit down and enjoy sort of cafe dining and that sort of thing. So that's what you might see on some of those other, streets off of Washington Street, where it's a mix of commercial and residential as well as mixed use. So in terms of the standards for the district that we're proposing, again, we want to make it a live-work district. We want people to live and work in the district if it's possible. Although, we understand that there might be reverse commutes. People might be actually commuting into Boston and living in Norwood, or vice versa. We want a diverse mix of commercial, residential, institutional, like we have, and entertainment. We want to make sure that the development of these buildings and properties is consistent with our historic fabric, our historic character. That means it's got to be, pedestrian oriented. It's got to be brought up to the street. It's got to be something that blends with the rest of the buildings, in and around the core area of downtown. We want to minimize any kind of functional conflicts between buildings that are in place downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods. And we want to make sure that we create vibrant public or publicly oriented open spaces. So again, here's the map. So again, I pointed out that we've got this transitional buffer zone along the neighborhood, but along Washington Street we have this commercial frontage zone. So what that does is it protects those storefronts and they have to be in business use. We don't want this to turn into a series of apartment buildings on Washington Street. We want to protect those opportunities for business development in the best area of our downtown, where it's most visible, where it's most walkable, and then anything, you know, above that or behind that could be used for residential purposes.
You just got one of those, I think it's just to continue the street, I believe, but it's in front of the common, so.
Yeah, the common, yeah. Well, there's not going to be any development on the common, so I can't see the town.
And the buffer, that's 50 feet, right? The green line? Is that?
The green line is 25 feet to the building, and the building's got to be shorter than what's allowed. It's got to be a maximum of 20 feet. So it's set back, and then there's a landscape screen. There's got to be like a full buffer landscape screen, and then a smaller building. So here's what I'm talking about in terms of that commercial frontage zone. You know, maintaining, you know, the ground level for commercial uses, and then up above could be commercial or residential. Here's that transitional buffer so that there's a setback. There's going to, you know, a well landscaped buffer and shorter buildings that are closer to the neighborhood. And again, it's important, you know, that we have, you know, the dimensional standards that make sure that we're, you know, consistent with the architecture, with the development patterns that make it, you know, an attractive downtown. So rather than having a minimum setback, for example, in the front, we have what we call a build-to zone. So there's a minimum and a maximum, because we want to make sure that those buildings are closer to the street, so that, again, they create more of a pedestrian and more walkable district, and they relate to the sidewalks, rather than, you know, putting them back and putting parking in front of them. The fronts of the buildings, we want to make sure that there's, you know, good, you know, orientation towards the sidewalks. You know, the openings, you know, that, you know, there's no, you know, blank walls and there's no doorways along the sidewalk. We want to make sure that they're permeable. We want to make sure that there's opportunities to do, you know, outdoor activities such as, you know, cafe seating, that sort of thing. We want to make sure that we don't, you know, even though we want reinvestment, we don't want really big buildings, you know, right on the right-of-way. So, you know, where the maximum height might be 40 feet, you can't do that right at the street line on Washington Street or the other streets. Basically, you have to step it back or set back the building so that you don't create sort of a canyon effect. So at the street level, you know, right on the sidewalk, you can do a building that's 25 feet tall, but you have to step it back or set it back so the taller it gets, so we don't create too much of a canyon effect. We want to be consistent with what's there today, essentially, and that's what it is. There's design standards for you know, the fronts, the facades of buildings, you know, good window space for commercial and mixed-use buildings, different architectural elements, you know, the ridges, the parapets. So we want to make sure that, you know, if we're going to incentivize new development, that again it's consistent and in context with what we have there today. So rather than having, you know, general standards, we have standards for specific types of buildings, because, you know, there's a big difference between a commercial building and a mixed-use building and a, you know, a row house or a townhouse type building. So there are design standards for each one of these that are specific to their particular characteristics and characteristics that fit into a downtown setting. So we've got, you know, the uses are the same as they are today on the table of use, but there's additional building design standards. You mentioned design guidelines and design standards. Well, we have those specifically for multifamily buildings, for townhouses or row houses, and essentially what those are single-family homes on narrower lots that have a common wall. So they're individual units, they're owner-occupied, but they're narrower frontages, like brownstones. Live-work units, which is basically one commercial unit on the ground level and one owner-occupied residence on the upper level. You know, it could be an attorney or an architect who has a shop downstairs, anything like that. And then larger mixed-use buildings, again, commercial on the ground level and commercial or residential up above. And, you know, in terms of pre-existing buildings, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, if there's, you know, parking in front of the building, like on some of the side streets, that we're encouraging the redevelopment or infill development, you know, up towards the sidewalk. Again, we're trying to create that enclosure, that pedestrian orientation, at the same time giving people an incentive to reinvest in these properties. But we don't want to perpetuate, you know, a sort of a strip development pattern. We want to sort of reinforce the pedestrian pattern of development. So the densities, you know, it's 16 per acre. You know, as we just talked about with the other districts, the other business districts, but we do allow the opportunity to go up to 24 units per acre in some situations, such as for a multifamily building and a mixed-use building. But you know, those bonuses are related back to public improvements. So public improvements could be anything from, you know, contribution of open space, public open spaces, streetscape improvements, public parking, and affordable housing, additional affordable housing. And those are things that would be developed, you know, would be negotiated as part of the special permit with the planning board if they're going to allow any kind of additional density for the given project. And again, you know, it goes back to those design standards. You know, does it fit on the site? Can they meet all the standards? Can they meet the parking requirements? Is it a good quality project, a good quality building? And if so, you know, then they're open to the possibility of, you know, allowing some additional density in exchange for good open space or good streetscape improvements. You know, we're putting in some additional parking standards. So, for example, we're allowing things like tandem parking for residential units. Basically, that's front to back parking that saves space on the lot. We don't have to allocate so much space to surface parking because, you know, the people that own an individual unit can park back to back. Does end up saving a lot of space. And, you know, allowing stack parking for valet parking for restaurants, that sort of thing. Just allowing, you know, the opportunity to share parking, to have satellite parking, so that we most efficiently use our public and private parking systems in the downtown. There's actually quite a bit of public parking downtown, but a lot of it's not used. A lot of people don't know where it is. And we want to make sure we take full advantage of, you know, the spaces that the town has already paid for. And as far as, you know, helping, you know, reinvestment into some of these properties. So things like, you know, on some of the side streets where we don't have any on-street parking because the corridors are fairly narrow, we're allowing the opportunity for what we call street side parking, which, you know, actually it functions like, you know, public on-street parking, but it's privately owned. So, for example, here's an example of it in Wellesley on Linden Street. This is a mixed-use building they put there about 10 years ago. And the right-of-way here on Linden Street is only 40 feet. They didn't have enough room to put on-street parking, but they wanted it because it helps, you know, the local businesses, and it also slows the traffic down. So the developer actually owns this property and extended the curb and put these on-street spaces, and they're open to the public. So they function like you know, public parking spaces, but they're a real benefit to the adjacent stores. So we talked about open space. Again, you know, you'll see like in a lot of zoning where there's a 20% open space requirement, but that typically is the, you know, the edge of the patch of grass that's down by the dumpster in the back of the property. We're requiring it to be an integral part of your development. And it could be a variety of different things. If you're doing a big project, it could be something like a common or a green or a neighborhood park or a pocket park. It could even contribute to a pathway. You know, if there's one being planned by the community gardens, even things like, you know, rooftop terraces and gardens. You know, if it's a commercial building or mixed-use building, you know, doing you know, cafe dining in front of the buildings, those sorts of things. So it's got to be, you know, a quality open space, whether it's public or publicly oriented or accessible or even private spaces. They have to be quality spaces. We talked about design guidelines, separate from this bylaw, we updated the 1998 downtown design guidelines. So in addition to, standards that are built into this overlay district, we have supplemental design guidelines that help the developer sort of better understand what our objectives are, not only with the building and the site itself, but how the building is going to relate to the streetscapes, public open spaces, parking, and the sustainable design, principles, that sort of thing. So it's really helpful, most times you see a development and there's no connection, there's no consideration for what's happening around it. So that's really an important part of our design guidelines, is making sure that it fits into the overall framework of the central business district. But we've got standards now for new buildings that aren't in the 1998 design guidelines, but are in the new design guidelines for this year, as well as the existing building standards in terms of how you maintain existing buildings and historic properties and that sort of thing. So that is, in a nutshell, our proposed mixed-use overlay district.
Ted, can you put back the slide, the one with the yellow, with the red, the locus? Can you throw that back up? Leave that up for a minute.
Which one? Oh, you mean the zoning map?
Yes. If you could just leave that up.
Yep. Oh, I had a lot of slides, didn't I?
Yeah.
I didn't know. I thought we were getting on 7:30. I didn't think it was gonna be a problem.
Yeah, we have to be up by, we gotta be up by 9:40.
Oh, we do.
So just a few. You almost had it. There you go, thank you.
Yep.
Just so people can see the.
Questions?
Chairman, can I just 2 seconds?
Oh, sure.
You're gonna hear me talk at town meeting on this. I am extremely excited about this. So what we're doing is we're looking at zoning completely different than we have for the last 50 years. I mean, what Patrick will tell you, developers come in, they say, I want to do something nice, I want to do this. Our dimensional requirements don't allow it. We tell them, no, you can't, parking, we got this, we have problems. So they move on to Dedham, they move on to Islington, they move on to Walpole, they move on to Medford, they put up these beautiful buildings, become vibrant downtowns. This is not something that's going to happen tomorrow or the next day, or maybe not in my lifetime or whatever. You've got to get developers interested, you have to have landlords, you have to have business owners, all these people, they just because, somebody owns property there, if they don't want to sell, they don't want to sell. I mean, that's their, So this is not something that's going to come up in the next 2 years. But what we're trying to do here is create call it a village, call it a district, call it whatever you want. And, it's perfectly primed. You've got, the town common, you've got Guile Square, you've got Washington Street, you've got train tracks, you've got a bus line, you've got 2 railroad stations, These young kids, these millennials, if you want to call them, or young families, they don't want cars anymore. They're different than us. They don't want that. A lot of them, and I shouldn't say all of them, a lot of them want to be downtown. They want to walk to the coffee shop. They want to walk to the train station. They want to walk to, someplace to get a sandwich or have dinner. And whatever we're doing on Washington Street, street lighting, the nice street lighting we have on Washington Street, we want to continue that all the way down. So we got to work with the town. So as things progress and we're ready to change, to repave or relight down here, to use the same kind of lighting. We put the same kind of crosswalks in. I mean, so that the entire area that's up here gets carried over all the way down through. And like I said, this is not going to happen overnight. This is going to be a long process. And through the planning department, somebody wants to come in and wants to develop this lot under the new guidelines. Well, the planning department's got to look at that, and they have to figure out that what goes in there, it's got to work into the entire district. It's a jigsaw puzzle. That, this piece is going to sit right, and through these guidelines that Ted has talked about, these building requirements and things like that, standards, that piece will fit into the whole project over time. So you don't have an eyesore here that doesn't fit in with everything else. So it's a whole work in progress. I think it's a great idea. I think its time is way past its time on this. And I know we gotta be out of here by 9:45 and we got another public hearing, but I just wanna throw my 2 cents in. And the density thing, please, don't let that worry you. The Talbot Building, everybody knows where the Talbot Building is. 81 units per acre, I think is what we figured out, wasn't it? Close to it? I mean, something like that. You know, so who knew, right? Olivardi's, you know, was 40 units per acre.
Talbot,
So,
86 units per acre.
86 acres in the Talbot Building per acre. Okay,
86.
so it's not like you're gonna get crushed here. And I think I'm excited about it. I hope you are. I'm gonna talk about it at town meeting, and that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we are under a little time constraint. We've got a number of things, but we're gonna open it up to the board, and then we'll open it up to the public, anyone who wants to speak on this. Anyone on the board have any comments on this?
No, I do think that we are planning. It feels a little less knee-jerk than, you know, we're planning. We're giving them guidelines of what, instead of just come in and put anything in, we're being, Mr. Spence said, if we don't understand that book, how are we gonna understand this 28 pages? I think we need to be specific. And it seems very detail-oriented, and I think that's a good thing. It's a little less, and we got too much ambiguity going, and so I'm in favor of it, and I'd like to hear what you guys have to say.
Al, any comment?
I think Ted did an excellent job in making the presentation here tonight, and he's got quite a comprehensive plan that he has put together, that he has worked with Paul and with Patrick and the board in putting this together. And I think it's something we've had a lot of discussion on, and it's something that I support that we move forward with.
Okay. Any members of the public? Yes, sir.
I'm John Hayes, and I live at 5 Maple Street, which is just beyond the boundary line that's shown on the plan for Manhattan Street. I do have a question about where the boundary line crosses Manhattan Street, because the 2 churches on either side of Manhattan Street really make a break between the commercial district downtown.
This is Manhattan right here.
Yeah.
So everybody knows.
And I'm not sure whether as shown in the drawing, whether the lot on the north side of the entrance driveway to the parking lot is inside the overlay district or not. And if it's not, then I wonder whether you really want to have just those 2 lots on the south side of the entrance in the overlay district, because it's not really an area that has a character where you'd expect to see buildings built right up to the sidewalk as if it were part of the downtown district.
I have to admit that when I first started working on this, I was completely confused by the existing zoning map. It doesn't follow the parcel boundaries. It sort of crisscrosses across the top of that zone and bisects properties and buildings. And I think it should be straightened out. You know, pick one or the other and stay.
Yeah.
So I'm just following. I was just following the central business district boundary as it is today. But it's a good question, and you know, we should probably take a
Is that
careful
something you
look
could look
where-
at before this gets nailed down completely solidly there?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a different issue, because you're talking about a zoning line, existing central business district zoning boundary change with or without this overlay district. But it's an important issue.
Just so I don't seem negative about it, I really congratulate the board on getting into this kind of study so that there's some consistency with how you deal with these issues through all of the downtown area. My question is really only about
Yeah.
a small bit of where does this new character of district end, and where's the transition to the existing neighborhood?
I'm with you. I mean,
I think
you
we
can see.
follow the property lines on that side.
What's that?
I think we switched them to follow
You
the property lines,
follow them on
right?
this side, but here you just made a great shot, and you're bisecting, building and parcels and that sort of thing. So
Right, remember we talked about this, and that was my concern. Don't fix the downtown to wreck the neighborhood, or don't wreck the neighborhood to fix the downtown. But we couldn't change that line because that was the 40-year existing line. And to your point, we couldn't do it before we did this. We'd have to wait another year.
Oh.
So not wait, it's just you have to go in front of town meeting, you have to change your zoning lines.
Yeah.
This has been there I agree with you, it's crazy. But my concern a few years ago was, let's not wreck the neighborhood to fix the downtown, let's think about this. So I would like to do that, I would like to clean up that line.
As a compromise, rather than taking on that major issue, that's why we put that transitional buffer in there. So we.
Could you pull the buffer zone, the green buffer zone that has slightly different standards to it? Could you pull that green buffer zone down to incorporate the two lots on the south side of the driveway?
You mean here?
No.
No.
No,
here.
over.
No, one more street over.
Oh, Manhattan, I'm sorry.
Behind the church?
Yeah. If you're walking up Manhattan Street from Washington Street.
You talking about right in here?
Yeah, well, the two houses on the south side of the driveway, yeah.
Right there?
Yeah.
Where's the parking lot?
I mean, I don't know whether the buffer zone has to be a constant width or whether you could just pull it out to pick up those other lots.
Where's the parking lot?
Well, it would be in the bylaw to be the zoning, the buffing zone would be in the bylaw as a certain width.
I see.
The planning board could waive down or, the zone. I mean, it could be negotiated. Just so you know that this does not change the central business district. This is an overlay. So the underlying zone that is there today will always be there. This is not changing that line. This is we're plopping this on top of it.
Yeah, but right now, you couldn't build a building up to the property line on those two lots.
I don't think we're talking about doing it there. I think he's only talking about doing it on Washington Street, correct? Where the red lines are.
Oh, that's the commercial frontage zone. This is the buffer zone right here.
Right, but you're not looking to build
No,
buildings right
no.
up
Not on the.
on Manhattan Street.
No.
We're not looking to do that.
I'm sorry.
We're not looking to build right up onto Manhattan Street up to the
I'm
front.
not looking to do it, no, but what I'm saying, you're changing by introducing this overlay district, you're going to allow something that's not possible at the moment. Right now, you could not, I think, build right up to the property line on those two lots on Manhattan Street. Is that true?
And you still can't, because we're only doing it on Washington Street, right? Or
To the street, to
What's
I think his question
if you're
is,
building right up to the street, is it
There-
only on Washington Street?
there
that
are
you-
setbacks still in place.
Yeah, there are setbacks
Yeah.
still in place, yeah.
So the answer is no.
Okay.
It's only if they're using the
Pretty sure
overlay
there's a
district.
zero.
Yeah.
The answer is no then.
They're in a general residence zone anyhow.
Mhm.
So you can't. No.
Those two lots you're talking about.
Yeah.
You talking about these?
I think the people who own those houses
Yeah.
now wouldn't do it, but a developer could buy those two lots and,
So,
put it totally in
Mr.
his
Chairman, for the
ordinance.
purpose of moving on, could we look at that and discuss that?
Makes
And,
sense.
and
Discuss changing the line,
discuss and changing the line and
Okay.
seeing.
Mhm.
and we'd have to do that by the 8th. We could also do what we did before, move forward.
Yeah.
Did say, let's move forward, but we we want to look at that change.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can discuss that.
Thank you.
Actually, no, under the current dimensional standards, they could, it's a zero setback in the
Yeah.
central business district, so they could in fact do that
Today.
Do it right now.
today.
Yeah.
They could build a commercial building with a zero setback, right
Yeah.
on the sidewalk.
No,
That's a
that's in
central
the
business
cen-
district.
It's in a general residence zone.
No,
No,
not the yellow part.
No.
Not the yellow.
No, the yellow's a central
This-
business.
The
this
two
area right
houses
here.
he's talking about?
Is that
At
what
the
we're
corner
talking-
of Maple Street?
No, not the.
No, he's not, these two right here, Al.
No,
No,
Right behind the church.
yeah, those are on
The
one
ones-
side of the entrance
the
to
ones
the parking
before
lot
his
there.
See, that,
Yeah,
those
this
are the
was
central
one of the
business
others.
district.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Right
The other
here.
church.
This is the parking lot coming in,
Could go.
the Davis parking lot.
Someone wanted to tear
There
it
are two
down.
houses.
Just have the feeling they're encouraging it a little more.
Well, no, but if they did like a multifamily or a
Yes, David.
townhouse, they'd have a setback.
Mhm.
Yeah, there
Yes,
would be a
David,
setback.
you had a
Mr.
question?
Chairman, I think Mr. Porro has in front of him our plans for the public hearing that we hope to be doing this evening. And we show on that photo the line between the central business district and the general residence district, as well as the line between central business and general business. I think the line between the Babel's parking lot, a large part of that is in general residence.
Yeah. You can see
And
it right
it
there.
appears that the line runs at an angle and between general residence and the business districts. And the two houses to the above, on Manhattan Street, above the driveway into that parking lot, I believe are in the general residence district.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And then the line runs up the middle of Manhattan Street for a ways.
so what's the answer?
So I think,
I would keep
I understand
those.
Mr. Hayes' concern, but
Yeah.
those
The
two
answer is
houses
they
are
can be
already in
built
general
and
residence.
and have a
Yeah,
daily-
subject
They're in
to
general
businesses.
residence, but not the central business district, but,
No, they're not, so they're not part of it.
yeah.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that
Does that mean that the drawing that we're seeing on the slide,
So these two houses right here are the ones right across from the chapel on St. Catherine's, basically.
right, yeah.
There's a boarding house, I believe it used to be a boarding house.
Yeah.
And a house behind it, and the parking lot goes into Babel's right next to it.
yeah,
And you kind of tucked in, used to be able to get into the back door of the Apollo here. Yeah, those are the two.
those are in the.
They're in the
central
business currently.
Yeah.
yeah.
They're there now, and they have a zero. Somebody could knock those down today and put something up there,
Yeah.
and so that won't
I
change.
think
These
that
are in the
would,
general.
that would be a disadvantage to the town if it happened, and if you could clean that up in some way, that would be good.
Right, thank you, yes.
Is it possible to look at this over and make some minor changes actually and have it in, prepared for April 3rd presentation to town meeting members? So it's just like tweaking this. I'm in favor of this project. It's a lovely project, but there are just some certain things in this that I'd like to see change. So rather than going through it today, is it possible that we can do it in preparation for April 3rd?
Here, could we take comments and look at it instead of voting on it tonight, leave it open?
We could, but we do have to get this to the,
Depends when it goes to print, so if we need to take it as a motion, that might be something we would have to do.
what are those
I'd
changes?
just like
What
to-
are those changes?
Well, on one of these things, I have the whole thing on my top, but one of the things is marked 4 stories, 45 feet tall at the height, and I would put 3 stories, so that, 35 feet is the height requirement. That's just like, that's just one thing.
We talked about that at the last meeting, and we are changing that back to 40 feet. Unfortunately,
40 or
Paul,
35?
3,
It's currently 40, not
It's-
even just on this, but in that area it is
it
40.
says, 4 stories or 40 feet.
right. We kept it at 40 feet.
40
40
feet.
feet is what's currently allowed in the central business district.
So
So
we kept it at 40 feet.
It's staying at 40.
40.
Correct, Ed?
Correct.
It's staying at 40 feet. It's 40 feet today, it's staying at 40 feet.
Okay, but it says 4 stories.
Well, if you figure 10 feet a story, is somehow, some construction people figure it that way, you get to 40 feet, but if you can't get 4 stories in 40 feet, then you're at 40 feet.
Why can't it be 35 feet though?
Because it's currently 40 feet, and that's the way it's currently under the central
Yes.
business district, is 40 feet. So we kept it at what it is today.
But it's here either or, so.
Either
But
one.
anyway,
Yeah,
that's
but the
just.
maximum is 40 feet, as it is today.
Right, so that's just one, but I have others too. So
Could we,
too
since
many
we're voting
to-
on the other one, could we hold off voting on this one and take some, I mean, it's tweaking, we're not changing pages and pages of it, it's tweaking.
No.
And if anybody else out in TV land wants to throw Patrick something, we're not saying we're gonna change the whole package, we're little, okay, we've done all this work, let's not celebrate in the 5-yard line.
Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Is that a night meeting or is that a?
That's a night meeting as well, but that's for downtown business owners. So that's more of a, but we have the April 3rd meeting, which is more open to town meeting members
So-
and the public at large.
Again, can we do the same thing, Patrick? Actually, I'm gonna call on Mr. Hearn, who may have a little bit of knowledge on this. We can, again, advise the Board of Selectmen, we can take a vote tonight if the board wants to, and we can advise the Board of Selectmen we are going ahead with the motion. We're gonna go ahead with the amendment. I mean, not the amendment, with the article, we're gonna go ahead with the article, and then we can vote on our recommendation at a future meeting, before town meeting. I think we can do that, right?
If we still have this open,
If
we would still have to keep this.
If we keep the public hearing open,
If we keep the public hearing open, are we gonna have time to close it and get it, in order to get it to the vote?
Right. Yeah, I guess that's
the question. Council.
Mr. Chairman, town meeting is free to propose amendments on the
Right.
floor. But the planning board, and I'm not giving you advice as a
Well-
counsel to the board, I'm saying is, in the practice of town meeting and the requirement of the law is that the planning board holds a hearing and it can make a recommendation.
Right.
Certainly, people who are interested will have suggestions. And Ms. Howard might have suggestions for you at the meeting on the 3rd. And there might be more suggestions and debate on the floor of town meeting. I had commented to the planning department that this meeting, the informational meeting, I don't know whether it's
not gonna be a continued public hearing.
but, well, maybe it isn't a continued public hearing. When you folks vote, it's up to you. But certainly, comment from town meeting members and other interested parties is valuable to the board. And I think you're soliciting input, although probably it ought not to be a debate on the 3rd, just more people putting in their 2 cents. At some point, you've got to get it printed and distributed. And so if it doesn't get resolved, if not everybody gets their 2 cents in, they'll have the opportunity in the floor of town meeting.
Do you know what we could
And
do?
town meeting's open to members to comment as well as any other resident to comment.
Mr. Chairman, we could close it and vote recommendation, and then as public comments come in, if we deem that we want to make a change at town meeting, we can, as a board, can and make an amendment to the motion that we would change line such and such to this, or we could do that right at town meeting.
I think you, excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
getting sloppy.
I think you can do that, but here's the problem with that is that when you're proposing a bylaw that's 20-odd pages, and you start proposing individual changes to it, it's tough for people sitting in town meeting to follow all the changes. So as much as possible, you want to get those changes, any revisions done before it goes to the printer. Not that you can't do it on the floor.
Right.
But if you had 15 or 20 changes coming in on the floor of town meeting,
we
will be there till the 4th of July.
When do we meet again?
Because it takes a while,
So,
and people will
meet again on the 8th.
need to see it in black and white.
Right, and again, we're not, no major changes, but there's some good ideas out there in TV land. And could we have just a little more input? I know we've put this out there, we've said we're having meetings, it's on TV, it's advertised. please come give us,
Then you have to.
okay?
Right.
I'm open to suggestions from, it's everybody's town.
So the 8th.
The
But
8th
we've
is our
Had it out
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
we've done
yeah.
TV, we've advertised, we,
I asked that today. I asked that today. and I didn't get
I've
an
all but
answer.
begged.
I was told that they're voting.
Are there
that
any
the
other
selectmen will vote to support
changes that you're
next
looking for?
Week, which is the day before.
I have a number
If
of
changes
them
need to
in
be
here,
made, they
but
can
they're
be made before it
in
goes to
this
print, which I don't think
document.
is going to print on the
But,
second.
you know
But
what?
it's getting
Maybe
approved
I
by
could
the
just go
selectmen to
down
go
the
forward as
planning
the
tomorrow.
I think that's a great
Um,
idea. If
yeah.
you could go down and speak to
Yeah.
Patrick or Paul, he's in. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I didn't get an answer.
Because the faster we get them, the better we can sort of process
Right.
them. And
But I've already made them like in
that's great.
my
That's-
document.
You did your homework, that's really good.
I did do my homework.
Yes, yes.
So she's
Miss Haley.
gonna stop by tomorrow and.
Okay.
I do have a question. So and I was a little confused between the 40 and the 45. Under the multifamily building and development, you have the building height as 4 stories, 45 feet. Is that going to change to 40?
That's gonna change to 40.
That one's
Yeah,
going
we're gonna
to
stay
change
at the
to 40.
40, that's right.
Okay,
That's right.
and then on,
We
under the,
debated that last meeting, we decided to go back to the
okay, and then under the mixed use, it's 4 stories, 40 feet.
40 feet, yeah.
Okay, all right,
That's
just
the
wanted
next.
to make sure that I understood where we were making the changes. Thank you.
Yep.
See, we might be getting a little snowblind, so having some input from people that
Yes.
haven't looked at this for 2 years
Right.
is not
Yes.
a bad thing.
Just real quick, those updated guidelines for 2019, are they on the website? I didn't see that on the planning
Are
board
they on the
website.
website?
I think they should be. If not, I don't know if the updated ones are. I think
I
they
didn't see it.
I'll talk to Paul.
Yeah.
That would be
Give
good,
me-
yeah.
I think the
And just out of
1988 ones are.
curiosity, would this proposal bylaw allow, for example, a restaurant to ask for rooftop dining?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can ask.
you can always ask.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We meet on the 8th. I think that if we continue the public hearing, we may not get it to the Board of Selectmen on time.
What is that date? We need to get it to them?
I believe it's.
But we have a
Like,
place
so
card.
the warrant- How are you gonna get the warrant printed and out to the members?
Yeah.
That date?
I'm not sure.
No.
The selectman's office or the clerk's office would know
Yeah.
when the warrant has to be mailed out.
But
The
we
warrant's
have,
gotta be set.
Yeah.
The motion
He
is a separate thing, and the motion could allow for amendments and changes.
Yeah.
okay.
Either
So,
technical corrections or substantive corrections.
so the warrant says, this is what we've got, we can get the warrant.
Yep.
We're just tweaking this.
It's
Yes.
got
We
to,
can-
yeah,
we
it's got to
can-
include a version of the proposed bylaw.
Okay, and we can change that and modify that to a certain extent up until,
The vote.
On the floor of town meeting.
Town meeting.
all right. So we're gonna leave the public hearing open.
No, close it.
No.
Well, we have to close the public hearing, but we can still take input into this until the 8th?
For town meeting, basically, right?
Until time.
Okay.
No, because we want to.
We don't have to vote on the recommendation tonight, Debbie.
Right, I just want, in my opinion, it should go to town meeting clean,
Right, so,
just clean. Here's what we got. You don't either vote it up or vote it down. But take some input. There's what we're presenting to you. And
Right.
if you don't like it, because there's too many changes, then vote it down. But this is what we got. So I'm in favor of taking as much information as we can get in within reason.
but if you close the public hearing, Debbie, you can't take in more information.
Right.
And make
That's why I
changes
don't
with a
wanna
public,
close the
close
public
public hearing.
We would have to make those changes at town.
You'd have to make
town
those
meeting.
changes at town meeting.
That's why I'm asking to hold the public meeting open until anybody can get to Patrick or Ted or
And then when
Paul,
do we vote on it?
the 8th.
And that's past the time when the Board of Selectmen are
But
gonna,
we have a
We can
place card
change it.
saying we're going on the warrant with this.
but they gotta get it printed too, Deb. That's the rub. They've gotta send this out.
We can't get it printed
Okay,
until the
Yes.
25th?
What
I
you could
recommend-
do, Mr. Chairman,
I-
is, you go ahead.
I recommend that we do close the public hearing tonight, and if there are anything that any changes that need to be made, they will have to be made, they can give it to us and we will discuss it at our next meeting, if we think they're good changes, we will have to do that on the town floor, the floor of town meeting, and we would be willing to do that. And if there's something that anyone disagrees with, they can always make those amendments on the floor of town meeting. I think that's the only thing we can do now. We're kind of under a tight deadline.
I agree.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Would that mean that I should not go down to planning?
No, you should.
No, you should.
You should.
You should.
You should.
Oh, I should?
Yes.
We still want your input.
Oh,
We just may not be able, we may have to make a change it on the floor of town
okay,
meeting.
I'll put, I can.
So
Yes.
could the planning board, offer an amendment at town meeting that you could have all prepared? And then you have
That's what we're hoping to do,
a
yes.
one-page typed up even if you wanted.
If we decide to make changes,
If you
yes.
decide.
Yeah.
And we would probably do that at our April 8th meeting, and we would discuss it at that time. Yes.
You could also have a meeting, post a meeting for the night of town meeting, if you want to change your recommendation in any way. It's just, you can't take public input
Right,
in an organized fashion once you close the hearing.
right,
And at some point, they've got to print a warrant.
right.
So the other thing, you could say, find out what the outside date is to submit the language. Find out what the outside date is, and then if that fits within your meeting schedule of the 8th, and you could tinker with it some more, you might do that.
Well, that was kind of my question, but nobody, I mean,
But we don't know. I don't know offhand what the outside date is.
Are we setting the type on this? I mean, what?
Not setting
Don't-
type, it's all word processing, but, and they figured out a way even to get in all these fancy charts and pictures into the warrant. But that, Mr. Chairman, is your concern, because the members have to see on the warrant a proposal. The motion can be different on the floor of town meeting, but they've got to be put on notice as to what the subject of it is. So you could put it in now, let the language go in now, and then come to town meeting and say afterwards, we took more input, we left the hearing open, and here's our latest version. But I just suggest that as town meeting functions, too many changes at the last minute will confuse people.
That's well taken. We especially with something like this, it's a complex thing, it's big. We could also, if we had to, see about reopening the public hearing if we had to. I would rather have it closed tonight and make our recommendation
If we close the public hearing and reopen it, we're gonna close the public hearing and not vote on it? Because once we vote on it, we can't vote on it again.
Yeah, you can.
We can?
Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
If you want to reconsider, under reconsideration.
Okay.
So you have to have
Okay. I'm just in favor of getting as much input as we can from...
As we all are. We're up
Okay.
against it.
Okay.
Does anyone have anything else to say before we close this and move on tonight? Because we are busy.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Anything further? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing is closed. Anything further on this?
Can you just give those dates again to when people can, with a date when it's open to the public for another informational meeting?
The one for town meeting members is April 3rd at 7 o'clock here in the Willett Room at the Civic Center, 165 Manhattan Street.
Okay, thank you.
Do we want to?
That meeting, Mr. Chairman, is open to the public, though, not
Yeah.
just town meeting members.
It is open to the
Open to
public.
the public.
Yeah,
Anybody.
all
Yes.
meetings are open to the
I
public.
think it was, we definitely want town meeting members there because they're the ones going to be making the decisions. But yes, anyone's invited, it's open to the public. Does anyone feel that we can vote on this and move forward at this time
Chairman, I'd say we
as is?
wait until our next meeting to make a recommendation.
Okay,
In case we do need to reopen
okay.
for
Do we
additional
wanna,
information.
do we wanna
It's like
make a recommendation to the
comments.
selectmen
We would have
to accept
petition.
this at this time, a favorable, to move it forward?
I would
We
make
did
a,
that, didn't
no, we moved to close the public hearing. I'll make a motion that we vote our recommendation at our next meeting, April 8th, but that we have the planning department tell the Board of Selectmen that we are moving forward with this article.
And to
As-
put it on the warrant?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's 5-0, so we move forward. Our next, thank you for coming on this item. The next one is the continued public hearing, site plan review, 253 Manhattan Street, Convent redevelopment, Dan American Legacy Engineering LLC, David Hearn Law.
We don't have time.
David,
Can we push this to another?
can we shut this off?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ted,
I don't-
can you
Ted, you
shut
gonna-
that down, please?
That's all right.
I don't dare touch those things, I'll break them.
I believe the last time we met, we just had a few items on this that we had some concerns. And I'll let either David or Dan inform us on those.
Quick update on the plan. We've incorporated all the comments that the board gave us and that the town departments gave us, the town engineer gave us. We submitted a revision with responses to all those. We have a memo from the town engineer indicating that all of his comments have been satisfied. We added the second 4-foot sidewalk here, all the way around to the edge of Unit 4. We also changed the landscaping plan to save the existing 24-inch crimson maple. Beyond that, it's just a bunch of little details that we had gone through and discussed at the last meeting.
And we did have the town engineer take a look, and he said that this was fine as far as the drainage goes.
Yes,
We do have a letter to that effect.
He reviewed everything, and he gave you a memo this afternoon indicating that all of his comments had been satisfactorily resolved.
Thank you.
There was a letter.
Was there any other issue?
There was a letter from
John Hayes.
John
Maple
Hayes.
Street?
Mr. Hayes.
There was a letter from Mr. Hayes that we received on March 25th, and he had some concerns about a driveway that is too close to Unit 1,
Yep.
and also the parking area for Unit 1 is dangerously close to Manhattan Street. Number 3, there is no on-site guest parking for parties. And number 4 is a temporary sidewalk at construction entrance. And number 5 is the hawks, that there are some hawks in the area who nest in the trees, proposed to be removed. Okay, and we did receive that letter. Ernie, did you have any comment on that?
No. Just so we're recapping, we're working with the wall. We're gonna keep the wall, right?
Keeping the wall.
We're gonna bend it around.
We're gonna have a little
and,
turn.
We are gonna we are gonna keep the tree,
We can keep the
the
tree.
Liberty tree. We're gonna try to keep the Liberty tree.
No
Yep.
turns on the walls.
And we've put in the mailbox. You showed the mailbox.
Yeah, we have a central mailbox
Still
location
central
here,
mailbox.
a little pull-off area.
I still don't understand that, but I guess that's mailman don't want to get out of the cars anymore. But
Most of these small developments
Yeah.
like this, they have one mailbox.
Everybody picks
on a
up
post,
there,
and everybody
yeah.
gets their mail there.
And I saw Mr. Ryan's comments on the drainage. He's fine with it, which is good. I don't have any other issues, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any further comments? Pro or con? Okay. Loving the trees, right? Okay. Good. Any questions, comments from the public on this? Yes, back there.
Who owns the interior? For example, the light fixtures, the stained glass windows in the chapel that's in the convent. I mean,
Mr. Hearn.
Mr. Chairman, that's really not a question to have anything to do with what we're doing here. Right now, the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston owns the real estate. We intend to purchase it and demolish the convent. If the parish wishes to take, Mr. Fitzgerald will tell me, hit me in the back of the head if I'm not right, but I imagine if the parish wants any thing from the building before it's demolished, the parish can have it. And but other than that, that has nothing to do with the matter that's before the board.
Okay, thank you.
well, if it, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but if it were owned by the new owner, they would have the property.
They don't own it at this time, is my understanding. Is that?
Right, but
Correct.
if it's approved, if this project is approved.
Well, that doesn't give them they have to purchase it, they have to go through their purchase with the church. If the church wants to take that out beforehand, I guess they can work it out between the gentlemen. So I mean, it's really out of our, it's not our purview
It's
here.
not, okay.
No, so,
I thought that once if the planning board approves the thing, then the contract is no. Okay, thank you for
It's a condition of sale though, right?
It's nobody's business. That's not really anybody's business.
That's between the developer and the parish, what happens to the vote.
Thank you for telling me.
anyone else? Yes, sir.
I wasn't sure I was going to be here tonight, so I wrote you a letter before the meeting. I think you've seen the letter also.
About 4:30 today, yeah.
I'm sorry?
About 4:30 today, yes.
Yeah. I heard that we have to be out of here by 4:00.
Yeah.
Is that right? Which means we
Could
don't
go to
really have
10.
very much time. Can I ask, is there anything you agree with in the letter that we could just put aside?
Mr. Chairman, we've done a quick review of Mr. Hayes' letter, and much of what he writes about is stuff that I think's been evident for some time during our several meetings. The hawk was something new to me, and I'm not aware of any rules one way or another. Certainly this board has no jurisdiction over that, so I'm not going to speak to that. On the question of, we've answered, I think, or responded to some of Mr. Hayes' previous concerns about moving buildings back from Manhattan Street. We've done that. We've taken out one building. We've pushed things back farther than was actually required. We're doing what we can to save the tree that he's spoken about several times. And we're saving the wall to the extent that that can be saved. And we've got to fill in some stairways, and we've got to open it up for the driveway. We've responded to the major things that have been raised. The other matters that he refers to in his letter, I think, for the most part, have been evident for some time. I suggest that the issue about a car turning in off of Manhattan Street into a private driveway is very different from a car turning into a public street such as Maple Street. So the concern about that I don't credit, because it's a very different set of circumstances. But we've tried to respond to his concerns as much as possible, and I don't think we agree about whether they're too close. So I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes, but I can't agree with some of the stuff you're saying here tonight. We think there's more than adequate parking, I'll say that. One more disagreement, I guess. We have more parking than is required by the zoning bylaw. We exceed it by 30%. Three spaces required, we've got 4. So I'm just not sure what the objections are beyond that.
Okay, then I can speak to it if you
We've only got about 4 minutes.
I do agree on one thing. The temporary sidewalk, I think we'll take whatever steps the town asks us to do to keep it safe. That's all.
Well, I think it's an internal problem for the project. I did note going through the drawings that the parking spaces in front of some of the units are only 13 feet long, which is shorter than the bylaw requires, but it means that a car parked there would block the sidewalk in front of the unit, and people would have to walk out in the roadway to get by. Now, that's not out on Manhattan Street itself, so I think if you want to deal with that problem with the tenants, then I'm not deeply involved with that. I think that's a problem that's easily solved on the site because you have excess depth from the other property line to the units on that side, and you could just push everything over to that side. The guest parking issue is one that I am concerned about because we have this problem already on Manhattan Street that whenever school gets out, people park up and down Manhattan Street and on Maple Street and Nichols Street to pick up kids from the school, and that only lasts for a half an hour or so. But if people have parties in the townhouse project and their guests park out on the street, it's going to tie up all of those streets for hours at a time. There may be more total parking spaces on the site than the zoning ordinance requires, but those spaces are all private to each individual unit on the site. If I'm going to a party in unit 14, I'm not going to park in a parking space that's in front of the doors to the garage to unit 4. So in reality, there is no guest parking on the site for any group of people that's bigger than 1 or 2 coming to a gathering in a house where they can use the parking spaces in front of the individual building. I think it is possible to provide some guest parking spaces on the site, and I've indicated where. And I think it would be a great advantage to the neighborhood to not have people from the townhouse development parking up and down the public streets of the neighborhood.
But that's the point, they are public streets.
There are houses up next to that too. If they have a party, what do? People work it out, I suppose. If I have a party at my house, or Dave has big parties at his house all the time.
They park on the street. But we have 18 more spaces than required. So those are the guest parking spaces. This issue could have been raised a month ago. It wasn't. We're not going to redesign the site for something that isn't a real problem, that is based on speculation. And in fact, as Ms. Holmwood said, they're public streets. And people are allowed to, if they're allowed to park, it doesn't matter where they come from, they're allowed to park there. We don't expect that's going to be a problem. We've got 18 more spaces than the bylaw requires. Some of the problems, we've done what we can to respond to the concerns.
I do have a concern with the parking because right now it's a problem. People park where technically it is not allowed to park, but they park there anyways.
Name and address?
I am at 3 Maple Street on the corner.
Name?
Kim Dansby.
We have to have that.
Yeah.
For the, okay.
So people park in places where they're not supposed to, and then an ambulance comes up the street,
right, but
and they can't get by as it is, okay? And then add to that in the wintertime when the town plows and the corner coming into Maple Street gets cut in half and you're pretty much down to 1 lane trying to get out. And as far as the storage, I can assure you it is not adequate because I am out there in storms clearing the storm drains so that our street doesn't flood out constantly. The runoff just coming down from Manhattan Street is unbelievable. All the trash and the leaves and just, you know,
That's not
bottles
part of this project.
and you know, the drain gets clogged. It gets, when they plow it shut in the winter, I have to go out there and dig it out.
How does that, but how,
Because
tie
the
that in,
runoff
tie
is
that
going,
in for me.
the runoff is going to be coming down that hill, that driveway that's very nearly across from Maple. Not, it's a little off center, and that's going to be coming down. Where's it going to go? It's going to go the path of least resistance, which is right into Maple Street, into the drains that are already inadequate for the runoff coming off of
Okay,
Manhattan.
but he's got more drains on site.
Yeah, the town engineer required us to put a little dip at the mouth of our driveway so the runoff couldn't go right into Manhattan Street. We have a trench drain there, a catch basin, all that drainage is going into
grate,
our
with a grate at the end of the driveway, so it'll-
drainage.
So, and then the other issue is that the driveway coming out, they're coming out onto Manhattan Street, which is already incredibly busy, and they're gonna wanna come across onto Maple Street and cut through the neighborhood rather than sit there blocking the traffic, trying to get up to the light from Washington and Manhattan.
That's true.
Right.
But that's not.
It's gonna be dangerous.
Well,
That's
then
gonna
that-
be very dangerous, because there's really not enough room to maneuver
I understand that, but that's
across.
not, we can't do anything about making things less dangerous. We can tell them they have to live within these guidelines, and we can't do anything about making it less dangerous.
You can build something that's not going to be so, can make it so congested and have it be so close to a residential neighborhood that has small
Yes.
children.
Mr. Chairman,
And there's a school.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Mr. Chairman, as the board knows, and I think many members of the public know, this is a general business district. We could build an office building there with a lot more traffic as a matter of right. We had to get a special permit to build residential in this zone. But it's a residential neighborhood on 3 sides of us, so we're building residential. We could build a much busier site, and neither this board nor the zoning board would have any say over the matter, because we could put a child care center there as a matter of right. We could put an office building there as a matter of right. We're choosing a benign, relatively benign use with very little impact on traffic on a site that could otherwise be made more busy. So I don't think, you know, the objections about traffic are unfounded. This board has not required a traffic study. It doesn't call for a traffic study. It is a low-intensity use compared to what we're allowed to do as a matter of right. And that's why we think this is a good project for the neighborhood.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I would like to know why there hasn't been a traffic study. It's a very busy area. There's the elderly housing up the street. There's ambulances and fire trucks constantly going up that street to those people.
The answer would be that the size would not warrant it.
I think the positioning of it does warrant it.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments on this? Anything else from the board? Seeing none. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Hello, gentlemen, I can't second it.
I have a second here, Al. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a 5-0. The public hearing is closed at this time. Is anyone ready to vote on this tonight?
I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'll entertain a motion, any kind of motion, to either deny or accept this or approve it.
Alan, that's our Eleanor's job. Put that together on a motion, will you? No?
I'll make if no one else will, I'll make a motion to approve, this is site plan review, right, Patrick? To approve the site plan review for the what is known as the St. Catherine's Convent.
253 Manhattan.
253 Manhattan Street.
Redevelopment.
That's my motion.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just wanna go on record that somebody got me into that building, the church, and it's a beautiful old building. I'm just going on record. It's a beautiful old building. That's it. Give it a one last nod.
Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? It carries 5-0. It's approved. Thank you.
It's a beautiful old building. Built like a tank.
Chairman,
Yes.
is there anybody here
We all
from?
need a little
Oh,
buffing
Mr.
up
Glosser
every
is here.
once in a while.
Mr. Glosser is here. I didn't see him. I was gonna say, I'd say we
Don't even
could,
get me started on that one.
I would move that to the next meeting if Mr. Glosser is here, so if we can.
Okay, coming up, Mr. Glosser, we have Sunset Avenue adequate access plan.
I'm sorry, what?
There's a question of whether or not we will be recalling the performance bond. And we have John Glosser from Glosser Engineering, Inc.
I'll take the hawk if you can get him removed.
The hawk sits on the church spire and has for 10 years. She has babies about every 3 years.
We have one over on Nichols Street.
And she
too.
lives in the pine tree that's coming down, I guess, actually. But they are protected, so maybe not.
Stan,
Hello.
say it, or
Wherever you want, John.
Dan.
Stan, so, I don't know, you guys, I guess, have heard kind of what happened, which was sort of unfortunate and a little alarming about the DOR.
Which, I know was a small, it wasn't a large amount overall compared to
No,
everything else.
but I think the point is, if it can happen.
Chairman, just to have those people.
Excuse
Oh,
me,
excuse me, we have another, we're
We
still
got
going
another-
on.
you can welcome to stay.
So
Or
I
if
did
you want
have
to go out, whatever you like.
I did have a conversation with Patrick and with Mario, and if there would be some way to take the bond, the 67 plus $1,000, and just get it so that it's only in the town of Norwood's name, knowing that what it's for, but just so it's only in the Norwood's name, so that there wouldn't be the opportunity for somebody to go in there without Mario's knowledge, and I think without the town of Norwood's knowledge, and actually withdraw. I know it was a small amount of money, and Mario did replace the money this week. He was not aware of it because the bank sent the notice to number 2 Sumner Street. He lives at 20, but they sent it to the wrong address, so he was unaware of it. But that would be my recommendation, and I did talk to Mario about it, and he does agree. And we're trusting that the board, is going to return the money. I did get informally some, and I will get you some formal ones, but I didn't, and it's a little bit my fault, wasn't able to really put together the final plan. But with some discussions with some of the very qualified contractors that I work with. The lowest guy said 20,000, the highest guy said 40,000. So there's plenty of money there to do what I laid out for you, but it is a little alarming to me that some other entity could go right into that account, even with the town of Norwood's name on it, and withdraw.
I can make it real fast, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion right off the bat, and we can discuss it after, that we pull the performance bond.
Second.
And get it into the town account with the, this doesn't get Mario off the hook here, but that we get that money into the town accounts as fast as possible.
Because it can always be refunded.
And, nothing will change, our agreement
Take it
with.
from his name, I'm sorry.
Nothing will change as far as.
Has he advanced you any additional funds? He was gonna supply you with funds to get this done, and we were gonna refund.
Well, no, I think what's gonna happen is he's gonna pay for, so let's just say it's 40,000. He's gonna pay for it, the 40,000.
But
and
has
then
he
come back-
advanced any funds to you? Because that's what we talked about
Yeah, I know
originally.
it.
That he was
had-
gonna advance the funds, you were gonna coordinate and run the project, and he's done nothing to that point, correct?
Well, but to be perfectly honest, I haven't really asked him to do that to this point because I really wanted to get 3 bona fide prices. So,
okay with that.
but so it's not his fault, but But your motion is not out of place, that's for sure, because it's alarming and you don't want to end up
Right.
being embarrassed and on the
Let's-
hook for this stuff.
So the motion is, let's start the motion to, the motion is to, let's get the wheels turning to pull that bond.
Okay.
Second,
Uh,
Mr. Chairman.
On that, I just have a
And it's roughly
Question.
60,
67,500, is it something to that effect?
yeah, they will
Yeah,
get
my
the-
understanding is that-
66,000.
that we need his signature on this, is that?
As it stands currently, and I think that's the issue that we're talking about, is that it would need
Yeah.
both the town and Mario to sign off. Pulling the bond and placing it into just a town-controlled account, it prevents the state, I guess, from coming in, taking some of that money as
Okay.
they've currently already done, and that the town would be in control of the funds to make sure
Okay,
it goes
so
towards the
on this,
project.
on this motion, you want to recall the performance bond, to get it into the hands of the town, to put it in a town account.
Correct.
Yes.
And the means by which they do it, we'll leave it up to
You got that
the
right.
professionals.
The
We'll leave it up to
Town
Town
treasurer.
treasurer.
council,
Town
and
treasurer.
treasurer,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
roll, and
Town council and town treasurer.
Yes.
and with the assistance of the planning board to fill in whatever else is needed. Okay,
Yeah.
so
And
we have a second on that, and any further comment? All in favor, say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a 5-0.
Okay, so, but we will be working to our
Definitely, John.
mutual.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Nothing else changes, John.
No, nothing, no, but I,
Mario, I'm sick of hearing his name.
yeah, but,
Yes.
you know, you did the right thing, because we don't want to all of a sudden show up and
You
find
need
out
to
that-
come see us on the 8th, is that too fast, or you?
No, let's do that again.
You wanna do that, so we'll put you on for the 8th?
Yeah, yeah. Okay?
Patrick will tell you what
You're
time.
a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
Thank you,
it's all right.
John.
I'm willing to do the best I can to get this.
It's almost
behind
plant
you
season.
and behind you.
Chairman, I make another motion
Thanks.
to adjourn with the only thing left to do is sign some plans.
We do have to sign those plans. We can adjourn, yes, and then we will sign the plans once that motion is seconded and passed.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Keep talking.
Yeah. 5-0.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.